4 p.m. I will call to order the regular meeting of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. If Secretary Ringgold would please take the roll.
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Kogia.
Present.
Commissioner Severson.
Present.
Commissioner Meyer.
Present.
Commissioner Vita.
Present.
Commissioner French.
Here.
Commissioner Forney.
Here.
Vice President Hassan.
Here.
President Bourne.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Before I ask for a second, just drawing attention to the request that went out to commissioners last week, that there's a request that 2019-303 and 304 be added to the agenda from full committee. So I will receive that as a motion with the addition of those two. Is there a second?
Correct.
Is there a second on the motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Musich.
I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda to remove Resolution 2019-305. It's a resolution directing staff to prepare a comment letter in opposition to Plan 9131 regarding the establishment by the City of Minneapolis of the Ivy Zenith 32nd Conservation District in the West Calhoun neighborhood.
There's been a resolution to amend the agenda to remove 2019-305. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the resolution to amend the agenda? Commissioner Musich?
Thank you, President Bourne. I just wanted to provide some context for why I was requesting that this be removed from the agenda. As far as I can tell, it's not within the purview of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board to determine whether or not conservation districts should be formed, and this particular conservation district would not directly impact parks or how they are operated or developed. So I don't see the impact on parks or why we would be issuing an opinion on this. Thank you.
Commissioner Vita?
I second it because I have the same concerns. I don't understand what this has to do with parks at all.
Commissioner Meyer?
I'll oppose the motion because I think it's relevant to the parks in several ways. It's immediately adjacent to Minneapolis. This particular area was the subject of a lot of park discussion during the discussion about our letter on the 2040 plan, when people were coming here talking about the shoreline overlay in our ordinance and the specific amendment that we made to our letter talking about supporting density around transit stations. Those were all in the context of this specific area. The park board recently lost our #1 ranking in the nation, and a big factor for why that was is because a lot of the new development in the city has gone around areas that aren't very park friendly. So the distance that people have to walk to get to a park has increased on average. There's a lot of park dedication revenue that would come from this. The park board has also previously been involved in things in the area, like they spent $1 million fighting the Southwest Light Rail. Really went to the brink on that, where the governor had to threaten to withdraw local government aid before the park board backed down. So I think for a lot of reasons, this particular area is something that we have discussed previously, and I do think it's relevant.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Is there any further discussion on the amendment to remove 2019-305 from the agenda? Commissioner Severson?
Yeah, if I could get to I just want to make sure for clarification purposes, we are a neighbor to this neighborhood, correct?
Commissioner Severson, I can answer that in the application that we are reviewing tonight. The applicant stated that the Minneapolis Park Board was a direct neighbor.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I would ask before I take the vote if all 9 commissioners intend to vote on this resolution. If there are any abstentions or recusals on this resolution.
Commissioner Forney.
I will be recusing myself.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of amending the agenda to include, to exclude Resolution 2019-305, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No. I would ask the secretary to take the roll.
So shady.
Commissioner Vita,
Aye.
Commissioner French,
No.
Commissioner Cogill,
Aye.
Commissioner Musich,
Aye.
Vice President Hassan,
No.
Commissioner Severson,
No.
Commissioner Meyer,
Nay.
President Bourne.
No.
You have 3 ayes. Five nays and 1 recusal.
The motion to amend the agenda fails. Is there any further discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the agenda passes. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of August 7th, 2019.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the minutes of August 7th? Seeing none, all those in favor of the approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? The
I'll
minutes-
abstain. I wasn't in attendance.
The minutes are approved with 1 abstention. Reports of officers, Acting Superintendent Ringgold.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm going to try to work the slides and read at the same time. So, athletics, aquatics, and ice arenas. Aquatics is wrapping up with the youth summer programs with over 2,021 youth who have participated in swim lessons, sailing, rowing, log rolling, and junior swim club. Volunteers, in that area, we have over 125 coaches who have completed concussion training and coaches certification for the upcoming fall sports. In ice arenas, youth from Armitage Rec Plus did a field trip to Parade Ice Arena and got to experience skating. They also toured the Sculpture Garden before returning back to the center. Athletics, we have a new lifelong leisure sports experience camp for middle school girls in the Northeast service area. It was a big success with girls experiencing golf, sailing, bike course, training, log rolling, bocce ball, and curling. In golf, 1,013 youth on course rounds have played at all NPRB golf courses so far this year. The Youth On Course program allows juniors to play golf for only $5 during selected times. Moving on to recreation centers, North Commons Festival of Fathers was held on August 10th. Even with the rain, hundreds of people attended. We had a Harry Potter camp at Corcoran Park that ran from July 29th to August 1st for 3 hours each day. The camp ran through funding that was allocated through the Equity Matrix, and it was able to provide a camp experience for neighborhood families who otherwise might not have had that opportunity. In total, 24 youth enrolled in the camp. Kids played several Harry Potter-themed games, including Quidditch, which was set up using hula hoops and dodgeballs on the tennis court. Kids also got to make their own edible wands using pretzels and Twizzlers, which were then eaten while they watched Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire on the camp's 3rd day. In youth development, fishing was a popular activity for Camp Youth Line participants. The Department of Natural Resources awarded a grant of $11,350 to introduce fishing to youth and families, and it was a popular activity at camps, family days, and events. Rec Plus end-of-year picnic took place on Tuesday, August 13th at Wobbin Park. 600 children enjoyed dancing, games, art, books, pop-up park activities, and of course, lunch. In planning, planning hopes to see you all at the grand opening of the Washburn Avenue Top Lot tomorrow evening, August 22nd from 5:30 until 7:30. The rain date, just in case, for the event will be August 29th at the same time. The location is 5825 Washburn Avenue. This will be a fun and low-key event with popsicles and bubbles, and is to celebrate the new playground at the park that opened late last fall. New multi-use fields opens at PV Park. There is a new multi-use field that opened on Monday, August 19th at PV Park. Turf on the park's new field has been growing all season and is now strong enough for foot traffic, sports, community gatherings, and general activities. If needing to reserve the field or the new PV pavilion, please contact Matt Bell at 612-230-3859, or Matt Bell at minneapolisparks.org. We thank the community for its patience this summer during the establishment period of the turf, because every neighborhood deserves a great park experience. One or two more items from planning. Bassett's Creek Park Open House is on August 26th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. This is an opportunity for you to share ideas and help prioritize a new phase of improvements coming to the Bassett's Creek Park. The open house will be held at the Harrison Recreation Center, which is at 503 Irving Avenue North. Project construction is slated for 2020 and focuses on park areas in the Harrison neighborhood. Lake Nokomis Shoreline Enhancements Update. Grant funding from the Lessard Sams Outdoor Heritage Fund is helping to restore almost 4,800 linear feet of shoreline along the northern and southeastern sides of Lake Nokomis. This area of shoreline was selected due to the increased erosion that has occurred along much of this area. This project is another step in the implementation of one of the project goals from the 2015 master plan, which calls for increased naturalized areas to improve water quality, stabilize shorelines, and increase habitat. The native vegetation will extend from the shoreline to within 4 feet of the walking path. Moving on to forestry. Forestry crews are hoping to wrap up tree removals by October, and then they will begin pruning, and they will be pruning into the winter. From maintenance and operations, we're sad to report that Franklin Steel Splash Pad is down due to mechanical problems. That's sad. Regional parks, due to 2 beach closures at Lake Nokomis, the maintenance crew has installed 5 beach closure signs, which were replaced by bigger 12 new high visibility signs. We've had some issues with individuals still using that area. But speaking of closures of Lake Nokomis, wanted to provide the board with information in general there around our lake beach closures at the moment, and in particular we've practiced this today. The Shiga toxins producing E. coli that has been identified at Lake Nokomis. So just as a reference, there are currently 6 park board beaches that are closed. 4 of them are the result of our normal E. coli monitoring, which has more to do with stormwater and kind of the heavy rains that we've had. Those beaches include Bedeh-Makaska at 32nd Street, Thomas, Worth Beach, and Hiawatha. No illnesses have been reported from those beach closures. There are 2 beaches that were closed at Lake Nokomis on August 13th due to reports of illness to the Minnesota Department of Health. So here's some more details on that. On the afternoon of August 13th, MPRB was informed by the Minnesota Department of Health that 3 individuals who swam at Lake Nokomis had contracted the Shiga toxin producing E. coli, which is STEC, is how I refer to that from this point forward. There were thousands of other people who may have been exposed by swimming at Lake Nokomis during the time period of mid-July to August 13th. Aquatics has taken the following actions in coordination with the Minnesota Department of Health, Recreation, Rec Plus, Environmental Water Quality, Communications, Permits, HR, and Maintenance. So first, staff quickly closed the beaches at Lake Nokomis and alerted patrons to stay out of the water due to elevated bacteria. Signage was posted, and as I previously mentioned, high visibility signage has now been posted to help make that clear. We immediately alerted youth and adult program participants that forthcoming programs and events were canceled at Lake Nokomis. Youth swim lessons and log rolling participants were reimbursed for missed classes, and adult open swim club was rerouted to conclude the summer at Cedar Lake. We complied with the Minnesota Department of Health requests for staff and program participant contact information in accordance with their investigation. We provided on-site information education ambassadors during regular lifeguarded beach hours to engage lake users who want to swim regardless of warnings with the fact sheet around STEC and encourage them to stay out of the water and complete the Minnesota Department of Health survey. We performed an internal staff audit of our lifeguards who have worked at Lake Nokomis since mid-July for any signs or symptoms of exposure, shared with the Department of Health. Per investigation, immediately removed staff with signs and symptoms from the schedule per direction from the Department of Health. We continue to work with the Department of Health to monitor staff health. We reached out to lake users, program participants via ActiveNet and the Open Swim Club Facebook page. We let them know to not swim if they have exhibited signs or symptoms of illness caused by STEC, and encourage anyone who believes they may have developed a STEC infection to contact their department of, or their healthcare provider. We've encouraged all lake users, program participants to please complete the Minnesota Department of Health survey, regardless of presence of symptoms. At Lake Nokomis, we removed the swim buoys and the docks to help further discourage users from using the designated swim area, or the perception that there's a designated swim area at the moment. And then through August 20th, there have been 69 reports of illness. This is likely represents about 5% of the people who swam in the lake last month. Then we continue to work internally and externally across departments as the situation evolves. So that's quite a bit on that. If you have more questions, I know we have a few folks from staff who might be able to help. Otherwise, you can send me an email and I'll make sure to get you additional information about it.
Thank you, Acting Superintendent. Questions or comments? Commissioner Musich, followed by Forney.
Thank you, President Bourne. I've received a number of questions from residents asking what they can do to prevent beach closures in the future, both of the variety that we are experiencing at the 4 beaches that are closed because of elevated E. coli levels that are not related to STEC, and then also what we could be doing at the beaches that were closed because of STEC. And my understanding is that much of the E. coli loading that we see with storm events comes from uncollected pet waste and the excrement from migratory birds. So the migratory birds, I don't know that there's a whole lot we can do, but I believe it would be helpful if we were informing the public that cleaning up after their pets is how they can help prevent these closures. And then in terms of STEC, it's due to the fact that someone was sick when they were swimming. And so if people are sick or your children are sick, please do not swim in a pool or in a lake. That's how we prevent this sort of infection from occurring. So if there are other things that I should be telling the public, or that my colleagues should be telling the public, or anyone else that has the opportunity to help educate the public should be telling them, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Acting Superintendent, do you have a response? Commissioner Forney.
Thank you for the update on that, and I'm just curious, so during all this, has Weber Pool been shut down during that course of time?
President Board and Commissioner Forney, I will invite Assistant Superintendent Jeremy Barrick to the mic to give you an update on Weber.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent.
President Bourne, Commissioners. Your question, I didn't hear all of it. It was about Weber Pool and...
If it had been shut down?
Oh, yeah. We check that every week.
But I mean, in the past, let's say 3 weeks, has it been shut down?
Has it been shut down? Oh, I thought you guys, if we checked it, I'm sorry.
No shut down.
No, it has not been shut down. We have tested every week this summer. We do have a UV filtration system in place up there. We did have some enterococci issues in the upper pool, which is the wading pool, where the initial test on Monday, we had elevated levels of enterococci. We closed the pool. We allow the pool to cycle. We retest. The levels reach the acceptable standard, and then we reopen. So we've had two instances of that throughout the summer, but the main pool has been open the entire summer, and we've always been able to get the upper pool back open before the weekend.
And I'm just trying to make the public aware that we do have an area that definitely is available, and that we have overcome the obstacles of last year, and I'm very grateful for that. And then I guess the last question that I have of whomever is, as far as the pools and beaches, when would we be anticipating closure of those for the season?
So, President Bourne, Commissioner Forney, Nokomis beaches are closed for the season.
Right.
Due to the duration that it needs to be closed with this incident. So the Department of Health, it would be opening again after Labor Day. And so we will be closing the beaches Labor Day.
That's what I thought. Okay. Just people enjoy what we do have. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Commissioner Cogill?
Thank you, President Bourne. Thank you, Acting Superintendent, for the report. I have two questions. One, are we aware if the state is doing any additional investigation on the reasoning for the beach shutdowns, the higher levels of E. coli? I mean, I've heard a couple of different reasons. I'm hard-pressed to believe that we've had more migratory birds in our system coming through this year than other years. Likewise, I'm confused by the idea that maybe more people have dogs and cats, or I guess dogs, not many people are walking cats. But regardless, is that kind of the level of knowledge that we have, or is there any additional work that's being done to kind of think about this so that we can move forward in a thoughtful and disciplined manner to try and ensure that it doesn't happen again?
I think we're looking to Assistant Superintendent Barrick again for a response.
President Bourne, Commissioners, I'll do my best. To my knowledge right now, the Department of Health is just focused on understanding how many people have been infected.
Okay.
As to the cause, yes, there's numerous theories.
Right.
Ranging from the water levels are higher, so we have water pulling in things out of the soil at a higher level, migratory birds, and such. So I'll have to look into that to find out what else is being done in terms of causation and looking for that cause.
Right.
But right now they're focused on just trying to recognize the number of infected people.
Thank you. Yes, I think that makes sense. I just think the combination of the fish kills that have been happening this year and this is concerning and warrants some more investigation. And then my other question is on Franklin Steel Park. If there's a reason for the shutdown, if it's a quick fix, it's just Franklin Steel has been hit pretty hard recently with a variety of its amenities being shut down, and its picnic tables taken away. And it was great to have the water feature functioning. I'm just wondering if there's any more details we have.
Sure, President Board and Commissioners. So Franklin Steel, we did get first we had a leaking pipe situation. We repaired the pipes, we got it up and running, and then once it was running for about a day, the controller failed on us. So once the controller failed, then we had to ship that to the manufacturer, get a new controller. We got the new controller installed, and then we've since ran into another issue with the filtration and the controller signaling. So we do anticipate having it open by this weekend. They have come up with a solution, and it will basically be running continuously rather than being activated. So that's the workaround to deal with the controller, is to have it activated from, I believe it was 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. was the hours, I believe. So it'll be activated and running for the rest of the season, and then this fall we'll go into what we can do to really fix it. It is an older spray shower. There is some tricky technology with it in terms of there's a chlorinator that has to be involved, and that results in some complicated plumbing that's proven to be finicky.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Does that conclude your questions, Commissioner?
It does, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. The time is 5:30. We have a time certain item on our agenda for open time, which is our public comment period for the Minneapolis Park Board. We'll just give folks a little bit of background before we go into open time. With rare exceptions, virtually at every one of our meetings, we invite community members to give public comment on virtually any issue that they want to give public comment on. It's our time to listen to the community. If there's issues that you want to see the park board address that isn't currently on our radar, this is your opportunity to share that with us. If you want to make comments on any upcoming or pending actions that the board has, we're here to listen to that as well. Just a couple of guidelines. We don't debate with folks, so we won't be responding to you when you come up to the microphone. If you have very specific questions, I may refer you to somebody on the park board's executive team that may be able to help you with questions. We typically allocate 15 minutes to open time based on the number of speakers. I have 14 speakers. I'm going to allocate 90 seconds per speaker because it's sometimes a little bit hard to get everything out in 1 minute. There's only two items that we do not hear at open time. Those are anything involving pending litigation or personnel issues. If you have comments that you want to share with the board or executive team about those, we want to hear them. But because of the sensitive nature of that, we ask you to reach out to commissioners and our executive staff directly, and all of our information can be found on our website at minneapolisparks.org. I am going to call up my first speaker. It's Councilmember Lisa McDonald. Councilmember, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Thank you, Chair Bourne and Commissioners. Lisa McDonald, 4241 East Lake Harriet Parkway. I want to speak against the resolution 2019-305 that the Park Board is considering today. First of all, the conservation district that is being proposed is not in or immediately adjacent to the lake shore, and I do not believe it should be in the purview of the Park Board. If density near the light rail station is the issue, then the West Callahan neighborhood will already be one of the most compact, densely populated neighborhoods in the city when the light rail station opens in 2023, with over 2,300 dwelling units, of which only 50 will be single-family homes. This should be a neighborhood with a diversity of housing types and affordability, not a bedroom community of apartments and condos, and creating a conservation district of small, historically significant, and not lakefront homes in the middle of the neighborhood would be a step in that direction. At the beginning of August, the Historic Preservation Commission decided to study a historic district on 6 blocks of Lake Harriet, fronting the Parkway and the lakeshore between 42nd and 48th, and 4 blocks into the neighborhood. Why didn't the Park Board weigh in on that preservation district? For the viewing public, I want to remind them that the builder of every new market rate housing unit has to pay the Park Board $1,500 in parkland dedication fees for each unit. So the Park Board has every incentive to replace perfectly good houses with expensive market rate apartments. In this case, there's the potential for an additional 54 to 400 units to be built, with the Park Board taking in $80,000 to $750,000. Obviously, this will not create any new affordable housing, just more market rate development. In closing, if parkland dedication fees become the rationale for denying this study, then I fear we will have a future of high-rise market rate development around our parks and lakes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Council Member. Our next speaker is Board of Estimate and Taxation Vice President Carol Becker. Vice President Becker, are you here this evening? Our next speaker is Arlene Freed. Arlene, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Arlene Freed, 1109 Xerxes Avenue South. I speak from a perspective of Fountains Park Board since 2004. I do not support a name change for the parkways. In my research, I used Theodore Worth's comprehensive history book of the Minneapolis Park System, which chronicles the Park Board's history from 1883 to 1944. I would like to point out that there is no mention in the exhaustive index or in the 352-page book of the name Bede Makaska. It is not a documented historic name. My second point is that your role as commissioners is to protect the park board and its assets. It is not your role to harm the park board, which you are doing when you remove the long-standing name Calhoun from both the lakes and the parkways. This entire process has been very disappointing. I believe it's been a waste of valuable staff time and resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freed. Our next speaker is Margit Berg. Margit, if you're here this evening, if you state your name and your address, if you're comfortable for the public record, you have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
I'm Margaret Berg, Chair of the League of Women Voters of Minneapolis Parks Committee. We are observing the park board meetings this year to evaluate how the board is measuring up in light of our position supporting transparency and responsiveness to community concerns. We are concerned that at times established procedures and effective community involvement and transparency get overlooked by this board in its desire for fast results. Here are the recent examples from the July 17th meeting that highlight why we are concerned. The failure to follow through on appointments to the Community Advisory Committee for the 2021 Comprehensive Plan. Despite adequate time to name candidates and consider staff recommendations, the board failed to act on this time-critical resolution. Number two, the addition of the resolution regarding single-use plastics, although we support it, to the board agenda without notifying the relevant committee chair or using the committee to vet this resolution. Several of the board members seem to be surprised that the resolution was even on the agenda. In addition, the League has observed a marked imbalance in gender among appointments to committees and outside boards. While the 3 women chair 4 of the 7 standing committees, the total number of appointed seats held by women commissioners is disproportionately low, only 22%. Given that 2 of the women commissioners bring seniority and experience to the board, this strikes us as even more unusual. Trust in the process is fundamental to effective government. The League asks that the Park Board give these concerns serious consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Berg.
And I have a little longer statement.
You can give it to Secretary Ringel.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. Our next speaker is Sid Bean. Sid, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Sid Bean, President Bourne, Commissioners. I think tonight is one of those times when you are being asked to vote on something. In this case, the changing of the Parkway name is a legacy issue. You will be judged clearly, in the future by one of these issues because it's been so divisive along the lines of income and race and place and symbols. Really, how the city in the future, not only the parks, is going to define itself, and how the children and grandchildren, and I have 12 of them who live within 20 minutes of that lake, are going to define themselves. You're literally saying to them, these are your values, this is how we should define ourselves, this is what we believe. So I'm asking you to continue to stand as you have, united around these legacy issues, because I respect you and appreciate all that you have done to educate this community behind the values that should be represented by the Park Board, and stand behind making Minneapolis one city. And you are in a position, along with us, to work together on that effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bean. My next speaker is Ed Bell. Ed, if you would come forward, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Hi, Ed Bell, resident, 77 years, graduate of North High, class of 1959. I realize that the legal name is still in question and the right to name the parkway after that. My concern is using the tax dollars that we would be spending for better achievement for the city residents, improving health and hygiene conditions, improved graduation rates, homelessness for indigenous people, people of color, and other people of need, drug awareness and rehab, help to procure employment and employment training, opening park facilities to outreach needs and programs, opening park facilities for after-school training, opening park facilities for collection of assistance and survival items, food, hygiene, seasonal closing. I don't see the park board partnering with any other corporations or city agencies, and I think we need to leverage our tax dollars, and I'm disappointed that we're not taking care of what we have, not filling potholes in the pathways around, do not post adequate speed signs of 25 miles per hour, don't enforce noise and speeding in our city. Thank you very much, and I have the longer version.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. You can give that to our secretary. Our next speaker is Leslie Bush. Leslie, are you here this evening? Angie Lalehi?
She's not present.
Okay, I'll check back on, I'll do another round of the list at the end and see if folks have come in. Rosemary Lundell, is Rosemary here this evening? Rosemary, welcome. If you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Thank you, President, Commissioners. My name is Rosemary Lundell. I live at 3326 Ivy Lane. I live in that small neighborhood you will be discussing tonight as you discuss your possible opposition to our going forward with a request for consideration as a conservation district. I ask that you do not oppose our ability to go forward. The city has 3 ordinances: historic designation, preservation, and conservation district. All are legal, appropriate opportunities to preserve single-family homes. Our conservation district application deserves consideration. We hope you have read the application. We are doing nothing wrong by making this application, and we hope, if you have not, that you will visit our little neighborhood. Based on 2010 census data, to repeat a little bit of what Lisa McDonald said, West Calhoun neighborhood has 48 single-family homes out of 1,394 total units. This is before the approved additional 750 units that the Bader Development Project will add. This is Minneapolis, not Manhattan, not Tokyo, and a variety of housing types is appropriate for the City of Lakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lundell. Our next speaker is Martha Yunker. Martha, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Martha Yunker. I live at 3406 West 32nd Street, also in the Conservation District proposed. I have a series of questions for you. What is the Park Board's mission and role, and why is it appropriate for the Park Board to take resources away from park projects when these projects are currently behind schedule and staff is overstressed and overworked in order to consider this conservation district? And why has the Park Board singled out our conservation district application? And is it the role of the Park Board to take a position on projects in order to raise more park fees? And how does this fit with the Park Board also supporting affordable housing, which does not provide park fees? I'd like to ask if the involvement of the Park Board in this matter is consistent with other Park Board actions or non-actions. The Cumming Hotel at the BP site, which is directly across the street from park land, was not addressed by the Park Board. It has no affordable housing, only luxury condos and hotel rooms. Is this consistent with supporting increased density and affordable housing and eliminating historic park access disparity issues? There was also a proposed multi-unit development at 3447 Lyndale Avenue South, which is 0.6 mile from Lyndale Farmstead Park. It would have added density along a transit route. Why was it opposed by the city? And why did the Lindale Neighborhood Organization, of which Mr. Bourne is executive director, also oppose it? And why did the park board not support it or comment on it or weigh in on it? That's it. I would just like to clarify that our neighborhood does not abut any parkland. It is separated by apartment buildings.
Thank you, Ms. Yunker. Our next speaker is Tom Shia. Tom, if you would like to come forward, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Thank you. It's Tom Shia. I'm very shy, but I'm here to echo the sentiments of my two neighbors who just spoke. I thought it wasn't going to be necessary when we had the initial motion that was declined. And the first question I have is similar. I'm not sure why you folks are involved in opposing our attempt for a conservation district. What we're doing is perfectly legal. It's a provision that's there, and we're simply taking advantage of it. I believe it was Commissioner Meyer said, well, we're concerned because our park board ranking is diminishing. I would suggest you take care of the parkway, the path around Lake Bede-Makaska before you start worrying about the neighborhood. The second thing is that it's been touted that this is financial. I saw the numbers in the report. I'll be very succinct. This is a money grab. You folks are looking at this as an opportunity to generate revenue at our expense. I don't think that is appropriate. Last but not least, well, not last but not least, you said you have concerns in the motion, or at least the agenda that I read, but it doesn't say what the concerns are. It just says we have concerns. Hopefully they will see the light of day. And last but not least, I'm just going to make a suggestion to everybody up there. You folks stick to the parks. We'll take care of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Shia. Our next speaker is Carly Badhartbull. Carly, if you would state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Hamidaka Yipi, Carly Badhartbull, Emakiapie. Damakotak Bede Ota Hedwatie. Hello, friends and relatives. My name is Carly Badhartbull. I'm Dakota, and I'm a resident of Minneapolis. I come from this place. My grandparents, Cloudman and Chokcherry Woman, led a village at Bede-Makaska, and my people are the original people of Minnesota Makoche. My son was born at Willow Birth Center in a building overlooking the lake, the home of his ancestors, even though my family was exiled from the state and didn't have the chance to grow up here. My Dakota son and other young people of color and indigenous youth deserve to be able to see themselves being recognized and celebrated in this city. Our indigenous and African American youth should not have to walk down streets with names that celebrate people who pushed for the subjugation of and violence against the bodies of their ancestors. None of us should have to. Dakota is the indigenous language of this state and this land. Some of the challenges that I've heard to the Parkway name change are that it's too hard to say. I've already heard it said numerous times here today. It's time for that argument to be done. There's power in our language, and asking our people, all Minnesotans, to say these 3 words in our homeland when we're fighting to save our language is not too much to ask. Another argument I've heard is that we're changing history. We're bringing voices, perspectives, and stories to the table that haven't previously been provided for. We're providing opportunities for truth-telling and community building. Dakota history is Minnesota history. It's all of our history. I recognize that this scares some people, including some people in the room, and that's because of how ingrained colonialism and racism is in our everyday lives. Some of the people who have spoken up are fearful of inclusive perspectives and processes because they are fearful of change, and in essence, they're afraid we're going to do to them what men like Calhoun did to us. They're afraid we're going to take something away from them. They're afraid that their stories will disappear if we are given the space at the table to share ours. That's not how this works. It's not an either-or situation. Learning how to say Bede-Makaska when you give your address to someone looking for directions, writing it down on an envelope is not going to take anything away. Instead, it's a gift that we are sharing with you that will connect you to the land that we live on. I want to say Wopita Tonka, commissioners, for your courage. I want to say thank you, immense gratitude for your time and for your commitment to be good stewards of this place that is so important to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Badhartbull. Next speaker is Vice President Carol Becker from the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Ms. Becker, Vice President Becker, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Brad, you just actually said my name. I am Carol Becker from the Board of Estimate and Taxation, in case people didn't catch that the first time. I'm here today to talk about the proposed action for the Park Board on the Conservation District that has been proposed by Commissioner Forney. Mr. Bourne wrote a letter that purported to represent the position of the Park Board when the Park Board had not taken any position, and sent that on as if it did represent the position of the Park Board, which the Park Board had not taken any position on. And I think that's an ethics violation, and I think that's inappropriate. And I hope that the Park Board addresses that individuals on the board do not get to go and say they're representing the board unless there's been an action. You should be angry about that. From Ms. Forney, I think what you're doing is awesome. I know that there has been some pushback from the community on whether or not conservation districts are appropriate. For people who come down to my end of the neighborhood, over by Hiawatha, we have a place called the Cardinal Bar. Cardinal Bar is at 38th and the Hiawatha Light Rail, and it's been there for 15 years, and it's a dive bar. You can get a burger for $5.75 and a $3 beer if you're at the right time. And the idea that somehow magically there will be giant development 4 blocks away from the light rail station is simply not true. And I say that because we have had light rail for 15 years. And we have not gotten this magic development that people are saying is going to happen. And I would argue that you should not be even involved in this issue. You have responsibility to the parks, not to the rest of the city. And things like not maintaining things like open space, not maintaining the vistas around the lakes, the loss of the shoreline ordinance and the preservation, water management, and we're now building giant buildings with no green space whatsoever. I think those are appropriate. But 4 blocks away from a light rail station, that's not part of your guys' thing. You got to focus on the parks.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Becker. Our next speaker is Mike Tate. Mike, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
President Board, fellow commissioners, Mike Tate, Minneapolis resident, longtime coach. I'm here to address a policy that is 20 years old in our system for youth sports that is now allowing our kids who are displaced happening to move to the suburbs because they can't afford the housing inside the Minneapolis area. As many of you know, it is changing, and they have to move to the suburbs. So this policy that's been in place for 20 years needs to be looked at, refined, so we can bring back those kids who were displaced or had to move to that area for affordable housing to be able to come back and play inside our Minneapolis parks. Number 2, I'm asking you to look at a marketing policy that will help us drive our recreational system back where our kids and our families can be able to come back to the park. As many of you know, we don't live in the same park system as we did 10 years ago. Families are moving into the city and they want to keep their families in front of their house. So we need to drive some kind of policy, marketing policy, to get those families back into our parks so we can show them a safe place to play, a safe place to be, and our families can get some time to do what they like to do. Number 3, I've been a volunteer for over 40 years. And my coaches are telling me, Coach, go fight for us. We spend our gas money, we take kids home, we feed them. We have never even got a stipend to go to Broadway Pizza. Please look at some way of rewarding your volunteer coaches that spend more time with these families and their children than most of your staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tate. You're the only person that's spoken so far that's addressed something that isn't on our agenda tonight, so I'd just like to refer you to our chair of our Recreation Committee, Commissioner French, or your district commissioner, Commissioner Severson, to work on the issue. I'm sure they will both get you in touch with the appropriate staff. Our next speaker is Lynette Davis. Lynette, are you here this evening? I think I see. Yeah, all right. Lynette, if you would come forward, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
My name is Lynette Davis, and I live in the West Calhoun neighborhood. I urge every park board member to strongly consider their main purpose on the board. On the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board's website, it is stated that the board shall permanently preserve, protect, maintain, improve, and enhance its natural resources, parkland, and recreational opportunities for current and future generations. Given that mission statement, one would think that the Park Board would be in favor of preserving a tree-canopied, water-permeable green space, instead of development that would cause increased water runoff from into our already flooded lakes. These lakes, the majority of the beaches have already been closed for most of the summer. How is that increasing access to recreation? One would think that the Park Board would be against hundreds of additional cars emptying onto the parkway. The city estimates that a similar sized development, Calhoun Towers, will create 3,178 extra car trips a day, and that this will only decrease by 15% when the light rail grows in. Deer, foxes, turkeys, hawks, and eagles inhabit the backyards of these homeowners. Where will the fauna live if the flora is paved over? The mayor and city council magically believe that high-rises over the lake will make housing affordable, ignoring the first law of real estate, location, location, location. The mayor and city council magically believe these new apartment dwellers will only use light rail and not own cars. This particular form of magical thinking is easier, of course, when your campaigns are financed by developers. One would think the Park Board would be a counterweight to such nonsense. Why would any of you be against conservation? The parkland dedication fees mentioned in this resolution are a false choice argument. The same density could be placed any place in the city, and the Park Board would still get the same money. You are arguing for density in your areas you are being charged with protecting. So I ask each of you Park Board members to vote no on Resolution 219-305.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Our next speaker is Al Flowers. Al, if you would come forward, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 90 seconds to address the board, and welcome.
Thank you, Chair Warren. This time I came to just thank the commissioners about this summer. I went to a lot of park, a lot of activities for youth all over the city. I've been to a lot of them. I want to, as we get ready to go in the fall, you did a lot, even though we still suffered some violence in the community. 16-year-old getting killed, 5-year-old getting shot in the foot, things like that. But it was a lot of activity, and that's something that y'all said y'all was going to do. So, and I'm hoping it continues as you get ready for the budget for next year and whatever the community can do to support the activities that y'all put out this year, with, working with trauma, dealing with kids with trauma and all these kind of other areas. Teamwork with Linda and Marlene and them over there, what they doing, the youth line, and one of the things, I don't know if Heidi and Serena is here, but Heidi and Serena, the work they have did in our community, it just don't happen like that. I haven't seen it happen like that here, but they have did the outstanding job for us, and I think we're gonna have a great year next year. But just all the activities, I went around, I've been to like 10, 12 parks, and nothing but activities for young people dealing with our trauma in the community. So this time, it's not about hollering, it's about telling y'all thank you, and then letting us know what we have to do to continue them programs in the future. So thanks to the Park Board, all the commissioners on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. I will refer you to Acting Assistant Superintendent Larry Umphrey. He may be able to give you some input on some of our upcoming budget conversations with the city and amongst ourselves. Circling back, has Leslie Bush arrived and is here to speak? So Leslie is not here. Angie Lalehi, is she here this morning? Or this evening, excuse me. That is everybody I have signed up. Is there somebody that signed up that did not hear their name called? Seeing nobody, that concludes our open time. We were still with reports of officers. Were there any other questions for Acting Superintendent Ringgold? Seeing none, I do have a request under reports of officers that Council Rice give us a very brief update on some closed out litigation. Council Rice.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier this month,
maybe it was late last month, Edward Feline, former city council member, brought an action against the park board and President Bourne under a writ of mandamus asking that the board remove some rocks at Minnehaha Creek. There was a hearing on the 12th of August, and just late last week, Judge Robin issued an order denying Mr. Feline's petition. It hasn't really gotten any or much media attention, but I thought it was an important matter for the board to consider. It's a bit related to the Hiawatha Golf Course. Mr. Feline was concerned at the rising level of water in the creek, and thought that the park board had contributed to it, and Judge Robin basically said that this is not the type of matter that a court takes jurisdiction over, and it's up to the board to make these decisions rather than the court. So I just thought I'd
thank you for
bring the board's attention to that. And Walter handled this and did an excellent job for the board.
Thank you for the brief update, Council Rice. Moving on to the consent agenda, Commissioner Musich, do you have a question?
Thank you, President Bourne. I thought it might be helpful for my colleagues, if they're interested, if Michael Schroeder provided just some background context about why there are boulders in the creek. Should they get any questions on that now that we've been given this update?
Please.
Assistant Superintendent Schroeder, I'm going to ask, just in the interest of time, if you can send a written update to board members. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda, resolutions 2019-299 through 301. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
The consent agenda has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on resolutions 299 through 301? Seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the consent agenda carries. Chair Forney.
On behalf of the Planning Committee, I would like to move Resolution 2019-290, resolution granting temporary access and construction easements to Ryan Companies, Us, Inc., and Arcadia on River LLC at 1101 West River Parkway in Central Mississippi Riverfront Regional Park.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
290 has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I would ask the Secretary to please take the roll.
Mr. President, I would note there's been some changes, I think technical changes, to the action since it went through committee that have been agreed to, but I think the board should note that for the record.
Thank you, Council. Before the roll, Assistant Superintendent Schroeder, could you briefly walk us through? Walk us through those changes?
President Bourne, Commissioners, the changes were relatively minor. The applicant changed the signature provisions in the easement, and there was a minor change in the legal description of the property.
Okay. And it's been reviewed by council, and council is comfortable with it? Okay. I will receive the resolution with the changes from committee as received through consent. So seeing no further discussion on 2019-290, if the Secretary would please take the roll.
Commissioner Musich. Aye. Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Vita. Aye. Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
The motion carries. Chair Forney.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-291, resolution approving encroachment permit for use of 68 square feet of land in front of subject property at 2323 East Lake of the Isles Parkway, encroaching upon parkland at East Lake of Isles Parkway within Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park, and collecting appropriate fees associated with this encroachment.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-291? Seeing none, I would ask the Secretary to take the roll.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Vita.
Aye.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
The motion carries. Chair Forney. Chair Vita.
On behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, I would like to move Resolution 2019-294, resolution awarding a construction contract to the Thomas & Sons Construction, Inc. in the amount of $1,063,263.85 for the Parade Park parking lot reconstruction per event ID number MPLN 400, pending approval by City of Minneapolis Procurement Division and Civil Rights Department, and authorizing administrative use of a 10% construction contingency upon the $106,326.39 for necessary construction change orders that may arise with the contract, and approving an allocation of up to $165,000 from enterprise fund balance.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
2019-294 has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of 2019-294, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries. Chair Vita.
I would like to move Resolution 2019-296, a resolution authorizing an agreement for cost share operations and maintenance of a sidewalk between the City of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board in North Commons Park.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-296? Seeing none, all those in favor of 2019-296, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the resolution carries. I would entertain a resolution for 2019-209, which is a second and final reading of a resolution approving and amending to Chapter 9, Article 10 of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Code of Ordinances to rename Calhoun Boulevard West, Calhoun Drive, East Lake Calhoun Parkway, and West Lake Calhoun Parkway to Bedé-McCoska Boulevard West, Bedé-McCoska Drive, East Bedé-McCoska Parkway, and West Bedé-McCoska Parkway respectively. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on Resolution 2019-209? Commissioner Forney.
I've stated several times in the past that I have voted to eliminate the name Calhoun from this very important asset in our park system. What is the name to be? I have stated that we are in a policy position to do placemaking. Adding the type of asset it is important to establishing places. This body, the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, have already voted on the use of the name Lake Bedé-McCoska with Resolution 2019-263 regarding the lawsuit of the naming by the DNR. The resolution stated the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board has supported the change of the name formerly known as Lake Calhoun to Lake Bedé-McCoska. Therefore, I strongly urge us to be consistent and continue this pattern. That resolution was passed on, June 26. All members who were present voted in favor of that, except for Commissioner Musich. I was absent from it. But we did vote on a resolution that stated that the name of the lake is Lake Bedé-McCoska. So I would like us to be consistent, and in addition, I have reached out to the American Indian Studies at the University of Minnesota, and I heard no issue of dropping Bedé and adding lake. I realize that the members of the Bean family here have been on the faculty, but as far as I can see, that they are not now. The 6th District Commissioner read of the dropping or adding to the Bedé-McCoska that was not a possibility, and my feeling is possibly he overreacted to that, and in fact that it is not an issue. So therefore, I'd like to move to amend the resolution to drop Bedé and add lake to the 4 roadway names.
There has been a motion to amend Resolution 2019-209 to strike all incidences of the word bidet. Is there a second to the amendment? Is there a second? Is there a second? The amendment fails for lack of a second.
Then I would like to move to amend the resolution to add lake before the use of bidet in the 4 roadway names, as we have already voted on that at one point in time.
There is an amendment offered to amend 2019-209 to insert the word lake preceding all incidents of the word bidet. Is there a second on the amendment? Is there a second? Is there a second? The amendment fails for lack of a second. Commissioner Forney, you concluded with your comments. Thank you, Commissioner Forney. I think the next speaker I have is Commissioner French.
I want to start off by saying we all walk and live and work on grounds that were stolen from First Nations folks, and we have to really consider that when we're making decisions about what we name stuff. The folks who look like me, they didn't have the opportunity to give input on what they wanted that name to be. We weren't allowed to because we were working, not for a living wage either, right? So for folks to come in and say, hey, let's keep this name to of Lake Calhoun, this guy who went around the country and said I should be enslaved. So my neighbors who come here and say, what's this fuss about? We can't change history. We can't change history, but we can determine what the legacies of our buildings and our monuments are. Me as a black man, to ask me as a black man to keep a name for somebody as despicable as John C. Calhoun is disgusting. And it's not neighborly. So I will be voting to restore the name to Bidet-Makaska, just like the Native folks wanted, exactly like the Native folks wanted. I won't try to augment it and half-butt it. Let's make it right for folks. This is like the least that we can do. Out of all the stuff we can do to make things right for certain groups of folks who have been downtrodden in the past, this is like the least we can do. Is to restore the name to something that their relatives and ancestors held dearly. So with that, I'm going to encourage the rest of this board to vote to restore the name of the parkways to reflect the name of the lake. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I would just add, I'm honored that the board is taking a vote on this action tonight. As your board president, I stated this a few weeks ago. I apologize that we didn't take a vote on this a year ago when the federally recognized name of the lake was restored to Bidet-Makaska. And we allowed this inconsistency to happen for so long. I agree with Commissioner French and the sentiments that Commissioner Vita made last week. This really is the least we can do, and it's such a small ask. I'm proud of the vote that we're taking tonight, and I would encourage and hope that this resolution passes unanimously. With that said, I would ask Secretary Ringgold to please take the roll.
Commissioner Musich.
No.
Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Vita.
Aye.
Commissioner French.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Forney.
No.
Vice President Hassan.
Yes.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 7 ayes, 2 nays.
The motion passes with 7 votes. Moving on to discussion items. Thank you everyone for coming. Moving on to new business, we have a presentation from Ms. Pope and Ms. Yeager on our youth development and the Minnesota Department of Human Services Certified Child Care Center process. Welcome, and we'll receive your report.
All right. Good evening, President Bourne, Commissioners. Margaret and I are here today to talk to you about new requirements for receiving county subsidies. And we're going to tell you a little bit about the new federal and state laws that require the certification process and talk to you about the impacts, and then also talk to you about the value of the certification process. So in 2014, the Federal Child Care Development Block Grant was signed into law to improve the quality and access for families throughout the city to have stable and high-quality child care. And in 2017, it was actually very late in 2017, Minnesota enacted changes to be in compliance with that law. So I'll turn it over to Margaret to talk to you about the process to date as to what we've done in the process for certification.
So the certification requirements involved about 6 items. Inspection of the recreation centers that have the Rec Plus Child Care Program, had state fire marshal inspections. We reviewed both the indoor and the outdoor spaces for the child care. Our personnel compliance with staff, both the certified and the part-time staff, had documented of training, which we were already doing, so the training requirements didn't change, it's just documented differently. Center policies and procedures, which mostly we were in compliance with, regarding health, safety, emergency preparedness, mandated reporting was documented as well. And then the last item, which we're here to talk a little bit more about, is the personnel background studies.
So this is new for us at the Park Board in Rec Plus. So that the certification process requires that we have a fingerprint identity verification system in place every 5 years and an enhanced background check. And that is actually done through the Department of Human Services web-based application. And it would take place in our Human Resource Department. And the Park Board then receives notification of applicants who are cleared for employment or who are disqualified. And there is a system in place for applicants to request reconsideration if the information is incorrect or if the applicant does not pose a risk. And the Park Board also can request a variance.
So the staff that would be going through the background study process will be the staff that are employed by the Rec Plus Child Care Program, which is the Rec Plus employees and the inclusion staff that work in the Rec Plus program, staff with direct access as well, which is the rec facility specialist, front desk, and therapeutic rec coordinator. The background study is every 5 years. The cost for the fingerprinting and the enhanced background study is about $8,700 every 5 years. This is a map representing where in the city families are receiving the county subsidies. This is about going back to 2016. And this is a 3.5-year look back on the parks that are receiving subsidies currently from county. This is a breakdown of the dollar amounts by park going back, once again, 3.5 years for county subsidies. Currently, we are meeting with DHS for updates in these practices, scheduling meetings with staff, explaining the new requirements, preparing for the new fingerprint process to start this fall, and scheduling site visits with DHS for the certification process.
And I know some of those numbers went by pretty quickly, so we can back up and show you that again if you'd like. But other programs that are going through the certification process or that have already been certified, we have some of them listed here, and most of these have multiple locations. And the reason we are going through the certification process is the value is to just demonstrate that the Park Board meets or exceeds best practices in safe and high-quality child care. And it also will allow us to continue to accept county child care subsidies for families. And then the Park Board will be listed on the Minnesota Department of Human Services list of certified child care centers. And we're happy to take any questions from you.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Bourne. I guess I just have a procedural question about why this is on the full agenda as part of new business discussion rather than in the Recreation Committee under which this division falls.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. I can address that question. I approved the agenda and I asked for it to be on the full board. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Colgill.
Thank you, President Bourne. I am curious, looking at the spreadsheet of the different years, perhaps you don't have an answer to this question, but the spreadsheet of years of subsidies, if there's any explanation to the changes or the higher level of subsidy received in 2018. I see that the numbers are higher. Are we expecting a substantially increased number this year? Would we expect it to be at a similar level, or was there a reason for the blip in 2018?
So the subsidies, Commissioner, can vary. The one for 2019 is just through July when we did the data. It can depend on a lot of factors, co-pays of the participant, if they're on a waiting list for Hennepin County, if we're offering fee assistance while they're on the waiting list. So it does fluctuate from year to year. I don't have an exact answer other than some of that data.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Severson.
Thank you for the presentation. I struggle with Rec Plus, and I also love Rec Plus. The reason I struggle is because when you look at this list of what parks it's at, it doesn't represent North Minneapolis. We have one Rec Plus program left at Weber Park, and it doesn't often reflect what the community looks like. So with that, I just want to encourage you folks to come up, and I know coming up with money can be hard, but I believe that this board is definitely behind supporting the youth. We'd love to see this program expanded because it is a really good program. And I would hope, and you guys have appeared to have done a good job not to conflict with, I think it's City Kids is what it's called, that Minneapolis Public Schools has. But it would be great to see this expanded, and I'd like to see it somewhere in the lower end of North Minneapolis as well, so we have one in each kind of part of North Minneapolis.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Is there any other discussion or comments? I'll just add and echo Commissioner Severson's sentiment. It's probably not the right discussion for tonight, but we've often discussed our Rec Plus model as partially revenue generating, but it's also publicly subsidized. I would be exceedingly interested in it being further public subsidized and having it in neighborhoods that have some greater displayed need. And so I know in our budget conversations, there was a commissioner request that seemed to receive quite a bit of support of expanding sites to at least one site to the north side. So I'm excited to see the developments around our staff reports for that. So thank you so much, Ms. Yeager and Ms. Pope. Our next discussion item, I believe, is Assistant Superintendent Schroeder and staff on an update on the Bidet-McCoska concession area. I think we have quite a few folks here to give us an update on that. So, Assistant Superintendent Barrick.
Yes.
We did. It did. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Barrick.
Good evening, President, Board, Commissioners. There's Michael Schroeder. That's big shoes to fill, so I'll do my best. But to provide a staff update on the Bidet-McCoska concession site, we do have a project page. Planning does have a project page up on the website as well, so I've included that link in the title slide. But just a real brief background. Of course, the fire was on May 16th, 2019. Since then, the Sailing School Wheel Fund have been using generator power. Lola's on the Lake has been providing concessions via the food truck, again with generator power. And we've had portable restrooms on site, or portable toilets. So the goal has been, the long-term goal, and I have some help in the audience tonight too, and I should recognize Dana Murdoch has been key to getting the contracting and the long-term solution done. And Shane Stenzel, of course, has been our concession liaison and working hard down there. So the long-term milestones here, long-term being in the next 2 years, but immediately this fall, restoring electricity to those facilities that are there, pave over the building footprint to allow for a smooth, walkable, accessible surface in the interim. Something that will last about 2 years, and you can see the timelines here that we're currently at. And then disconnect the existing water service and sanitary lines. So that's estimated to be September, October, and then install new permanent drinking fountain along the trail, again, estimated September, October, estimated because it's through a procurement process and bidding. So currently there's a fence that's been put up around the building to protect the public from what's left of the foundation of the building. And the conditions that had been there were this. So it was kind of a combination of areas where there was tile. Some of the tile had been taken up in the demolition. And so really uneven, unaccessible surfaces. So the fence has been up. Understanding an interest to get it open by this weekend and have a better facility by Labor Day. We've had staff down there. They started yesterday. We met Monday, put a plan together. They started yesterday. They've been removing all the loose tile and breaking that up, and to give us kind of an accessible, unfinished, I'm going to call it urban chic floor surface, similar to what you find in breweries. And then what we'll do is retract that fence and return over 3,000 square feet to the public space. And so we're retracting the fence to areas where, if you look at some of these pictures, you can see some of the areas, and unfortunately the pictures are pretty good, there's still some unevenness in some areas that we wouldn't want to expose the public. So retracting that fence, that'll allow the Lola's food trailer to move into that site, the ice cream truck that's down there to move onto that site and return some more, expand that patio space. So then we expect the work to be, we're shooting for Saturday, that we would have things, the trailer moved this Saturday, we would have everything restored. All the public space that was there before the building, basically all that's fenced off would be what was private space in the pavilion minus the bathrooms.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent. Commissioners, do you have questions, comments? Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Bourne. All of our other food vendors do have restroom facilities with running water and soap available on site. Because the restrooms burnt down in this location, will we be providing a more sophisticated restroom facility for people that are eating in this location to ensure that they are not accidentally spreading? So they're not going to get sick, is my main concern. Is that something that we've taken into consideration and are researching at this point to try to get in place? Or are we intending to only put porta potties there?
So President Bourne, Commissioner Musich, so right now we are intending only to put porta potties. We have 4 porta potties there. They do have the hand sanitizer in them. That's the standard. We did look into the more elaborate, if you will, trailer restroom facilities that you'll see. And they price out at about $8,500 a month, and it would cost us about $102,000 a year to put one of those units on that site. So we did talk about potentially putting the hand washing stations. We can get so you have the porta-john, and then you have an outside hand washing station. We can look into that and look at the cost of that. One of the things we are thinking of this as at any of our festivals where we have food and stuff, we do provide porta-johns, but we hear the concern, and we'll look at the hand washing stations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Commissioner Forney.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Colville, followed by Forney.
Thank you, President Bourne. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Barrick, for the presentation. I'm very excited to see this moving forward so quickly, and I appreciate Commissioner Musich's question about the hand washing station. I just want to say overall, more generally, I'm really hopeful that we can get a more robust bathroom space by next spring, given the fact that this is such a high frequency area, and to that food point is, I think, pretty critical. But in the meantime, and maybe ongoing, I think the urban chic look is a great way to go.
Thank you, Commissioner Colgill. Now Commissioner Forney.
You didn't know that you had coined a phrase there, huh?
I go to the breweries.
Yep, he's hip. If the slab was completely removed, how does that impact what might the future, shall we say, footprint of anything be there?
I'm going to defer to my colleagues in planning. I am an arborist.
Who's deferring to another colleague in planning?
Assistant Superintendent Schroeder?
President Bourne, Commissioner Forney, we're actually researching that, and we have an architect looking into the regulations related to our ability to rebuild on a foundation. We don't have a complete answer to that yet, and leaving the foundation there was predicated on the possibility of us rebuilding closer to the lake than would be otherwise allowed under the shoreline ordinance.
Thank you. The shoreland ordinance of...
President Bourne, Commissioner Forney, we have setbacks from lakes depending upon the types of lakes. Every lake in Minnesota has those kind of setbacks. And when we were going through the process of looking at a restroom to replace the restrooms in Lola's, if you recall, when we were going through kind of a strategic planning exercise for this location, we were required to place that restroom, I believe, 75 feet from the ordinary high water mark.
The reason why I asked that question is that we haven't been following the shoreland overlay, and so that's why I'm wondering, is that the DNR, or is that the city, or?
President Bourne, Commissioner Forney, it is the city's ordinance, and there are several provisions around that relating to setbacks, heights, and other factors relating to stormwater management. And while the building preceded any even model ordinances from the state of Minnesota, from the DNR, relating to the shoreline ordinance, it is in place now, and we may be obligated to follow that. But we don't know. We may be able to rebuild if we can demonstrate that there was a building and that there was a foundation there closer than what would otherwise be allowed.
And can you define to me, what do you mean by foundation? Is this just a slab, or is there footings? Is there a crawl space? Is there a basement? You know.
President Bourne, Commissioner Forney, the construction type is a slab on grade, but even a slab on grade has foundations that would support the walls, the surrounding walls. So when you look at the pictures, you can find evidence of block walls and posts and other features that would suggest the locations of the footings that supported the building.
Okay, and so in our research, as far as the footings that might be there, are we evaluating the heft of the structure that it could take?
President Bourne, Commissioner Forney, we are not there yet.
Okay.
But part of what we would need to analyze first is our ability to place a building in a location where we had a building, and then most certainly going back and looking at not only the ability of any foundation structures to support a new building, but also looking at changes in codes that might have happened since the building was originally constructed.
Thank you for all this research. And I'm not sure who I should be addressing this to, but somehow I think that this is to Council Rice. And Council Rice, our contract with Lola's, I just want to make sure that we're not breaching anything there. If we are, if you perceive any, shall we say, liability that we haven't fulfilled, let's say, our side of the agreement.
None whatsoever. We had a provision in the agreement that if something like this happened, that's on them. They took the risk.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, these are all things that, people are asking me, and I just want us to be prudent at each step we go. I agree that, any way we can provide services, I've advocated for a long time, water, bathrooms, whatever. But I think, number one is electricity to get there, particularly considering the generators that are there, sound, whatever, it's whatever. I appreciate that is going to be something that's going to be cured soon. And thank you for the follow-up.
President Bourne, if I may, I just want to, I forgot to mention that the electrical contractor was there today and has installed the box, and so that work is underway. So we'll have electricity available soon.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Barrick. I just have one really brief question, and I apologize if I missed it while I stepped away for a moment. But it's my understanding that we're clearing the deck in 2 phases, and that that all of the fences are coming down sooner than later. Did I miss that in your presentation? Can you address that?
President Board, I may not have articulated it well enough, but there's a 2-phase. So there's the get it open this weekend phase, which is the urban chic flooring and that fence configured to a smaller footprint.
Is that the green outline?
I'm sorry. Yep, green outline. The green outline would be the
So about half of the building will still not be occupied, or the space will be off to the public?
Correct, and that will be until about mid-September, and when a contractor will come in and asphalt over the entire footprint and give us a smooth surface that'll last more than a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay. And that's anticipated with mid-September, so we're looking at a couple, 3 weeks tops. Correct. By the time the entire space is open. Yep. I don't know if this isn't necessarily something I need a response to, but something I'd like staff to go look at in the meantime. There's quite a few temporary bathroom solutions that are a lot better than the satellites that we currently use. So I know a lot of larger events like cross-country races bring shower trucks and actually have larger trailers with full enclosed plumbing. And I think we can make a little bit better of an experience for folks by spending a little bit of money on renting that in the interim. And I'd be excited, but also leery about actually installing a permanent bathroom fixture until we have an entire plan in place. But there are some pretty high end. There's some pretty high end rentable options there. So if you could look at that as part of the. If you have a response, I'm happy to hear it.
Okay. Yeah. So President Gordon, we Shane researched that already and found that it was about $8,500 a month for the standard 3-stall, ADA accessible, entrance, exit, I think semi-heated and cooled, but they're costly at $8,500 a month. I believe the BIFs we're currently using run us about $90 a month. Mm-hmm. So there's a significant cost there. We can explore that and try to find funding if that's what you're suggesting. We can look at that, but it is costly.
Yeah, I'd certainly be interested in having that brought forward as a budget consideration in the 2020 budget. Just the satellites aren't a viable interim option while we're building something else out. Are there any other questions for any of our assistant superintendents on this report item? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation, and we're excited that it's open. With that, we're going to have an expanded footprint this weekend. Moving on, I would entertain a resolution.
I'll move Resolution 2019-305. Resolution directing staff to prepare a comment letter in opposition to Plan 9131 regarding the establishment by the City of Minneapolis of the Ivy Zenith 32nd Conservation District in West Calhoun neighborhood.
2019-305 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I didn't see who went first, but just for the public record, are all commissioners participating in this discussion and a vote? I'm seeing Commissioner Forney, are you recusing yourself from this item? Let the record show that Commissioner Forney is recusing herself from 2019-305. I didn't see the sequence of lights. I see Commissioner Meyer followed by Vita, followed by Coyle.
Thank you, President Porn. I support this resolution because I believe the conservation district in question is a backdoor attempt to override the 2040 plan. This location is very close to Bede-Makaska. It's also 5 minutes away from the proposed light rail station, grocery store, restaurants, lots of other amenities. There are very few locations in the city that have such good access to both parks and public transit. So I believe we should welcome more people to live close to our parks, and I prefer that they be able to access our parks with public transit instead of cars. So that's why, I believe that this is a place that is appropriate for more houses to be built. This is something that has come to us before. This exact same area was the context for the discussion when lots of people, we had dozens of people emailing us, coming to Open Time to talk about the city's stance on the shoreland overlay in the 2040 plan, saying that the 2040 plan is overriding the city's shoreland overlay, and we should have a letter in opposition to that. And so I researched into the shoreline overlay and came back with the opinion that the shoreline overlay wasn't doing anything to improve water quality, and that there was not a good reason to oppose the changes in this particular area, because it was a very accessible area for public transit. So a lot of the same people who came and spoke today had previously contacted us to get us involved in the opposite direction. So I believe that this is an appropriate thing for us to be commenting on. I feel that Vice President Becker actually made that case for me, with her comments about the parks should be involved in the shoreline overlay, or the parks should protect vistas. Right? Well, what if we believe that we should add to the vista with a few more towers? If it's irrelevant on that side, then it should be relevant on both sides. And this is something that I think we should be talking about. Also in the context of gentrification. If we're concerned about gentrification elsewhere in the city, then we should think about where it is that we want the development to be placed. And this is a place that is immune from gentrification because it's already a very wealthy area. So I support this resolution. I believe we need to adopt the position that we welcome people living close to our parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. I have Vita followed by Cogill.
Thank you, President Bourne. I am not in support of Resolution 2019-305. I believe if we pass this resolution and say this space is within our authority, that, I think I'd be worried that any planning and land use issues could come before the board in the future. I also believe that this will take up lots of staff time and our time as a board, and I feel like we have other things we can be working on. I love to say to people that we're a neighbor to all neighborhoods. So this argument that, just this one particular place, we're neighbors to everyone in the city. There's a park in 10-minute walking distance from everyone who lives here. So that's why I'm fearful that anyone can show up. And the last thing, I just think this is an issue for the Planning Commission and not an issue for the Park Board.
Thank you, Commissioner Vita. Commissioner Cogill.
Thank you, President Bourne. I appreciate Commissioner Vita's comments and Commissioner Meyer's comments. I personally am not going to be supporting this resolution. I would say that overall I am a major supporter of the vision of a sustainable region by building close to the core, especially along a transit route. I just don't believe that in this current state, the MPRB is really in a position as a body to comment on this. I encourage all of my fellow commissioners to go to the HBC and to lobby me at the Planning Commission should this come before the Planning Commission regarding this issue. But I personally don't think that at this point it is worth our time.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. Is there any other discussion on 2019-305? Seeing none, I'll just share some of my thoughts. Some folks had made the assertion that there's nothing wrong with this application. I certainly agree. This is, the Minneapolis folks do have this within their right to make an application, as we are asked to do, and to Commissioner Meyer's point, as we're asked to do with many things that have potential impact on parkland, we're often asked by constituents to weigh in on what that potential impact is. I do have a little bit of concern that, one, there's some discrepancy as to whether or not the Minneapolis Park Board is an immediately impacted neighbor. I'm relying on the applicant's statement in the application themselves that says that the boundary is confined by what is now Bedeh-McCoska Parkway. So the application stated that we are a directly impacted neighbor. The applicant has stated to the press that, as opposed to setting up a conservation district, and that this is a tool to reduce density, and not in fact a tool to preserve some of the homes that are there, which is a very worthwhile cause. That I think falls within the purview of the park board, reconciling that with this board's comments that we unanimously passed on the 2040 plan that said in these particular areas, we do want people to have access to live closer to parks. I'm additionally concerned at the number of requests that I've had from what is currently called the West Calhoun neighborhood, but they have approved changing their name. But I'm really concerned about the decades of requests that I've received as the District 6 Commissioner to make investments in neighborhood amenity level investments in that regional park. And parkland dedication fees will, if there are any generated from this, and there's this action today, may very likely generate nothing. But I'm also concerned that there's consistent asks from neighbors, and this could limit some of our tools to provide that. I also take heart in the fact that the shoreland overlay still exists, and the Minneapolis Park Board is an advocate and an ally of the shoreland overlay district, and that I think that if the park board weighs in on this, that supports our previous positions, there are still, for the folks that live in West Calhoun, I don't envision 10-story skyscrapers happening in this area. I think that this resolution reinforces a position that the board has unanimously taken. And I will be asking commissioners to support this. There's also been comments about why this one and not previous ones. I think that that's a failure of our system. If there are applications that are coming through that have potential impact on Minneapolis parkland, we should be reviewing those. In every bit that a house 3 doors away from the Minneapolis Park Board is not adjacent to the Minneapolis Park Board, it's still within the Shoreland Overlay District, and we still very much care about the development that happens there. And I think that effectively, I think that knife cuts both ways. And so I appreciate Commissioner Meyer and bringing this resolution forward. I understand that it is a difficult issue for us to weigh in on, but I think it's a worthwhile issue for us to weigh in on. I think that if there are more of these that are coming forward that have potential impact on parkland, we should be examining that potential impact as well. So, seeing no further discussion, I would ask all those in favor of Resolution 2019-305, please signify by saying aye.
I'd like to request a roll call, please.
There's been a roll call requested. Acting Superintendent.
Commissioner Musich.
No.
Commissioner Cogill.
No.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Vita.
No.
Commissioner French.
Aye.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 5 ayes, 3 nays, and 1 recused.
The motion carries. I will recess the full board to move into committees. Chair, I think that there was a request to have the Administration and Finance Committee go first. Chair Vita. We have, there's items coming up to the full board from,
The time being 6:50. The time being 6:50, I would like to call to order the Administration and Finance Committee. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner French.
Here.
Commissioner Severson.
Present.
Vice President Hassan.
Aye.
Vice Chair Cogill.
Here.
Chair Vita.
Here.
You have a quorum.
I would ask for a motion of approval of the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor of approval of agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Approval of the minutes for Wednesday, August 7th, 2019.
So moved.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? We have several action items.
I will move Resolution 2019-302, a resolution awarding a construction contract to Versicon Incorporated in the amount of $863,900 for the Lindale Farmstead Recreation Center building improvements and addition project at Lindale Farmstead Park per bid event number MPLN 441, pending approval by City of Minneapolis Procurement Division and Civil Rights Department. Amending the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Capital Improvement Program to include the 2019 allocation of $6,084 to the Lindale Farmstead Recreation Center building improvements and addition project from the East Harriet neighborhood portion of the Parkland Dedication Fund, and authorizing administrative use of a 5% construction contingency up to $43,195 for necessary construction change orders that may arise with the contract.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2019-302, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
I move Resolution 2019-303, a resolution approving a neighborhood revitalization program action plan project funding agreement with East Harriet Farmstead Neighborhood Association to contribute $347,876 towards the construction of Lindale Farmstead Recreation Center building improvements and addition project at Lindale Farmstead Park.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2019-303, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? The motion passes.
I'll move Resolution 2019-304, a resolution awarding a construction contract to LS Black Constructors Incorporated in the amount of $2,935,296.17 for Curry Park Phase 1 improvements rebid per bid event number MPLN 398, pending approval by the City of Minneapolis Procurement Division and Civil Rights Department, and authorizing administrative use of a 4% construction contingency up to $117,411.85 for necessary construction change orders that may arise with the contract, and authorizing the transfer of $20,500 from the 2019 MPP 20 Rehabilitation Fund for park lighting, $240,000 from the 2019 MPP 20 Capital Investment Construction Contingency Fund, and $240,000 from the 2020 NPP 20 Capital Investment Construction Contingency Fund.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2019-304, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? The motion passes. I would ask for a motion to dismiss. All those in favor of dismissal, please
Aye.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are dismissed. Adjourned. Sorry.
Secretary Ringgold, I'm not mistaken, those are the only items with a request to come forward this evening, tonight.
Last two.
That said, I will reconvene the regular meeting. Chair, I'm reconvening the regular meeting. Chair Vita, if you'd like to move those.
I would like to move Resolution 2019-303, a resolution approving the neighborhood revitalization program action plan project funding agreement with East Harriet Farmstead Neighborhood Association to contribute $347,876 towards the construction of the Lindale Farmstead Recreation Center building improvements and addition project at Lindale Farmstead Park.
2019-303 has been moved. I will second the motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I just want to give an incredible, grateful thank you to the East Harriet neighborhood. $347,876 in NRP funds is an exceedingly generous gift for a neighborhood project. And there are so many worthwhile things for neighborhoods to contribute their remaining NRP dollars to, and they have been very, very invested in the continuation of their rec center at East Harriet for years. So I really applaud them for putting their money where their mouth is. So seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of 2019-303, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries. Chair Vita.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-304, resolution awarding a construction contract to LS Black Constructors, Inc. in the amount of $2,935,296.17 for Curry Park Phase 1 improvements, rebid per bid event number MPLN 398, pending approval by City of Minneapolis Procurement Division and Civil Rights Department, and authorizing administrative use of a 4% construction contingency up to $117,411.85 for necessary construction change orders that may arise with the contract, and authorizing the transfer of $20,500 from the 2019 MPP 20 Rehabilitation Fund for park lighting, $240,000 from the 2019 MPP 20 Capital Investment Construction Contingency Fund, and $240,000 from the 2020 MPP 20 Capital Investment Construction Contingency Fund.
304 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on Resolution 2019-304? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, petitions and communications. I'm going to start with Commissioner Vitae.
Thank you, President Bourne. Oh, where did I put my notes? Give me 1 second. So we had our second Police Advisory Council meeting. I've attended both of the meetings, and I had conversations with some of the appointees and told them that I would speak to the board about some of the concerns and also some of the changes they would like to see as a part of the Police Advisory Committee. So some of the things that have come up already is that we need some admin support for Radius, who is doing a wonderful job at facilitating the meetings. None of the participants really want to take notes, so they feel like we should have park board staff there to help Radius in the administrative roles to take notes. The group would also like a budget for this park police committee. They are concerned that whatever ideas they do come up with, that they won't be able to fund them if money is needed, so they would appreciate some sort of a budget for this. Also, they would like money for food. We've had a couple conversations about multiple trainings. One of the members of the committee would like her mom to do a training around white supremacy and the history of policing for the committee in order to move forward. Another training has been proposed that we should reach out to Voices for Racial Justice to do some implicit bias training and just look for opportunities for additional training. What has come up in this advisory committee is that it may be difficult to move forward if we don't have the trainings that they're asking to be provided and some of the other things that they've asked for in these trainings. And so I just want to let commissioners know that these are the things that are being talked about in this meeting. So I don't know how we address these concerns, but I want everybody to know that these are concerns for the meeting, for this group. I think that was everything for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vita. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. I had a great time on the slow roll touring the Upper Harbor Terminal site yesterday and riding our bikes all around North Minneapolis. We had about 70 people, and they do that every few weeks, so I encourage everyone else to try that sometime. I was also honored to be at the groundbreaking for the Survivors Memorial a couple weeks ago. And then one other ribbon cutting that'll be coming up soon is the Sheridan Memorial Playground, which will be on October 5th. So I invite all the commissioners to put that on your calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Kogel?
Thank you, President Bourne. I appreciate Commissioner Vitaw's comments about the Park Police Advisory Council. I think it's really critical that this advisory council continues and does good work, and it sounds like there are a couple of hurdles. So I look forward to continuing conversations with Commissioner Vitaw and with Radius and with the Park Police, Chief Ohado, on how we can move past some of these roadblocks. A couple other updates. City Planning Commission met on Monday. There were no projects being considered that had immediate adjacent impacts to parks, though I was excited to see that the O'Shaughnessy Distillery was approved, which is going to be next to the current site of Surly Brewing in Commissioner Meyer's district, just because we'll have another distillery and it might be fun to go there, Commissioner Meyer. I also want to thank staff for all the tireless work on the Southwest Service Area Master Planning Project. There have been a couple of, I think happily, contentious meetings about the vision for our neighborhood parks, and debate has been intense, and people really care about the vision for the future of these park spaces. I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of the Community Advisory Committee process, and I'm hopeful to see that wrap up here quickly so that we can get to our 45-day comment period and really be talking about finalized concepts. I just want to be clear to those who are concerned about the a couple of major areas in my district, including the mall park and also the parade complex, that we're still in iterative design phase in some ways, and we don't have a final plan for those spaces. And it's my opinion that we need to stick to our engagement process, and I look forward, along with my fellow commissioners, in evaluating the final draft plan that comes forward. And finally, I attended a meeting, a state fee meeting around Franklin Steele Park last week. Franklin Steele is really dealing with some incredible issues right now around crime and safety, especially around overdoses, and folks that are really struggling with some mental health and addiction issues, who use that park a lot. And it is impressive to see the neighborhood group step up and hold space for conversation. It's been really impressive to see what Newman, the director at Elliott Park, has done to try to activate that space, and what, frankly, all the staff has done to step up this year. I think there's a lot more that needs to be done. We've unfortunately taken away some of the assets of the park in an attempt to address in the short term some of the concerns around safety in the space. And I don't think that's a long-term tenable solution. And the fact that we just in the last week have lost the use of the splash pad is just insult to injury at this already kind of underserved park. So I look forward to continuing to work with staff and have discussions about how we can move forward at Franklin Steele. I'm having a couple more meetings with the neighborhood group in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. Commissioner French.
I guess I also attended the Survivors Memorial at Boom Island, and it was a great event, great speakers, and it was nice to see the combination of a lot of hard work that folks from the community got together and got to do. I want to address some concerns that I have about the Southside Reunion concert that we had last year. That was an extreme success. We had almost 3,000 folks, mostly Northsiders, who came out and enjoyed Boom Island on a pretty nice day in I think it was September or August last year. And it was a great event, and I really stressed about how the park board needed to participate in more events like that and become more community focused in communities that haven't necessarily got that much of attention in past. So I was called maybe about a week ago to find out that the plans for this event had been changed. And there was some, I guess there was some ball dropping that happened maybe a couple months ago about funding. And I wish what folks would have came and expressed those concerns, would put folks from the park board so we could have done something about it. Now we're 3 days out, and we don't have the folks that could participate in this event actually participate because of funding issues. We got to do better than that. We got to make sure that all the city's events, all our park events, are treated specially, and not just the ones that are held at Lake Harriet and held at Lake of the Isles, but all our events. So I'm a little concerned and a little disappointed. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Commissioner Forney?
I guess I will support Commissioner Vitale's concerns regarding the Police Advisory Committee, and whatever I can do to help make sure that the outcomes are, I don't want to say positive, but productive. I think we all as commissioners should be supportive of that. And I also wanted to support Commissioner Cogill's comments about the Southwest Service Area Master Planning. The process has been incredibly robust. I'm very appreciative of all the community input, and would just want to again remind everybody that it is not concluded, nothing has been stated, and that we do continue to welcome your input regarding that. I forward on to staff and Council Rice at the northwest corner of Bede-Makaska. It's called the Northwest Athletic Field. It is presently a lake, and across, adjacent to that, is a virtually continuous flow of water coming from a sump pump from one of the what should we say, below medium priced condominiums that are adjacent to that. And it just enrages me so. I just don't understand this. We, the parks, are taking this discharge. And my understanding is that this condominium association needs to have a permit with the city. And yet we're the ones who are taking, I think, the discharge. So it's just that circular battle of whatever, we're the recipient of all the water runoff, and it has impacted that particular field now for, I think it's a half a dozen years, that has been unplayable space. So I find that very disconcerting and would like to have that addressed. And then lastly, this is called petitions and communications. And in our agenda, at the very end of the packet, there is petitions and communications. And it was announced at a meeting that if there was any concerns about a letter being sent to the Friends of the Lock and Dam, please express that. And I've not heard if that letter has ever been sent. It never has appeared in any packet. And these are very critical issues that have been requested of us by people who we partner with, that we want to continue to partner with. It's already been spoken about tonight, but this heritage preservation application, a letter went out to that body, and yet it was not included in the packet once again. So I really would like to remind people that if you are sending things out in our letterhead, please keep us all informed, include them in our packet. I think that is doing our due diligence, and I find it very upsetting that we are being left out of the loop, and there is no record of this communication that is going out. So please, a reminder, petitions and communications are specifically for that, and please keep us informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Commissioner Severson.
Thank you, President Bourne. I'll be brief. I met with Sergeant Dave O'Connor from the Minneapolis Police Department last week, And he works in a group called the Black Men's Project with some people I identify, particularly in my community, as leaders in our community, such as Mike Walker, the executive director of Black Male Student Achievement with Minneapolis Public Schools. They approached me, and this is a group comprised of Minneapolis police and community members. And I was approached particularly because I have some interest in trying to figure out ways to deal with homelessness in the harshest months of winter. So I look forward in the next couple weeks to present some of their ideas, and I hope you guys share some of the values so we can be a participant in perhaps not solving homelessness, but make it a little easier for those individuals who are experiencing homelessness at that time. They are also interested in trying to figure out a way to make North Commons Swimming Park more accessible to the community, and that is something that that I'd like to propose to you folks in the future as soon as we come to terms on what that looks like. With that, I also wanted to say that I wanted to thank my fellow board members this evening for being able to disagree and have actually good debate. And I hope that this board continues to move forward and being respectful towards each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Commissioner Musich.
I just wanted to provide my colleagues with a little bit of context around the boulders in Minnehaha Creek that we were brought before the courts by Mr. Feline about. Those boulders were placed to prevent erosion that was occurring within Minnehaha Creek with the consultation of the watershed district. They also were preventing the erosion of bridge foundations. So that was really all I was hoping that Assistant Superintendent Schroeder could share with you. I'd also like to request that the Rec Committee Chair request staff to report, to provide a staff report on potential policy that we should be enacting as a board around tackle football and other contact sports. There have been a number of articles in the national news recently about the impacts of contact sport on young people and their long-term mental health and cognitive ability. For example, children that begin playing tackle football before the age of 12 have increased odds for clinical depression, apathy, and executive function problems, including diminished insight, judgment, and multitasking. Children that are participating before the age of 12 in contact sports also exhibit behavioral and mood problems at full 13 years earlier than children that begin participating in these sports at the age of 12. And that every year younger than that age that someone's exposed to tackle football, the start of cognitive problems were demonstrated to begin 2.4 years earlier. And behavioral mood problems were starting 2.5 years earlier. Given that we all have expressed a number of times throughout the past year and a half our concern and desire to see the children of our city cared for and supported, I believe it's important for us to fully understand the research that's available on this subject and that we determine what sort of sports opportunities we would like to provide and policies around that to ensure that we are not inadvertently exposing children to long-term cognitive impacts by the offerings that we provide. So if we could take that up in committee, I would really appreciate it. I also wanted to thank Commissioner Vitaw for sharing that update on the Police Advisory Commission. I believe it's really important that we all remain abreast of the work that's being done there. I'm a little concerned about nepotism or the perception of nepotism by hiring family members of participants on that committee or staff on that committee. So I prefer that if we are going to engage consultants, follow Park Board policy and work to do an RFP or just ensure that it's a fair and transparent process that we're utilizing to hire people that will be training folks. I'm glad to hear that they're interested in bias training. I would still really like to see the Park Board of Commissioners themselves receive that training. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich, I had a request to go back to Commissioner Vita very briefly.
Very briefly, thank you, President Bourne, for instructing me that all I needed to do was turn my light back on if I wanted to speak again. I forgot some very important things. First off, I want to thank Officers James Cannon, Peyton Lauber, and Justin Brown. I'm sure commissioners got an email that the park police apprehended a suspect in the parks that was a very wanted person. So I really appreciate their service and very thankful that our park police worked very hard for that to happen. Also, on a much lighter note, May Brooks, our Director of Human Resources, did the YMCA triathlon, and May's not a swimmer. She's learned how to swim more recently, and she swam across Lake Nokomis. So that is, I know, right? That's pretty spectacular. That was really good. And also James Sparrow and his team for taking care of our trees. They've been doing a lovely job also. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vita. Just a couple of things. Some members of staff and I attended the mayor's budget presentation last week. The mayor's proposed a city levy increase of 6.9% levy increase for the city and a 5 3/4 increase for the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. We're still running some numbers to see the impact on current service level for us. There is some concern that that number is lower than our initial projected current service level, but I think that we think by sharpening our pencils, we'll be able to maintain current service level, but that number has none of the board priorities from our initial budget work that we've done this year. Outside of the context of just the levy increase, the city of Minneapolis's operating budget, because of some pension savings that Council Rice was very helpful in getting, the city of Minneapolis will be enjoying somewhere around realizing somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 14% increase to their general operating budget. So there is a little bit of disparity there that we'll be working on in the next couple of months at the Board of Estimate and Taxation. To the Board of Estimate and Taxation, I mentioned last week that there was a staff posting position. The Board of Estimate and Taxation is moving forward with hiring for a part-time position, 15 to 25 hours a week. The projected rate comes out to somewhere between $50,000 and $65,000 a year. So not entirely sure how that number was arrived at, but if somebody's looking for a pretty awesome part-time job, it also sounds like they're trying to fast-track the hiring there. So I encourage folks, the job posting is posted on the Council of Nonprofits website and a few other places right now. It seems like a pretty great job. I also had the honor of attending the Survivors Memorial and having the opportunity to speak. I'm very grateful of the unanimous support that this board gave to really stand behind our values and standing with survivors. It was a beautiful event. Thank you to Commissioners and Council Rice for attending the retirement party last week for Kevin Moody, who was the lifetime employee of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and longtime business agent for the Laborers 363. I just want to thank him for his lifetime service to the Minneapolis Park Board. That is all that I have, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment? Oh, I actually have one more thing, if I can have some forgiveness on petitions and communications. I had misspoke earlier before we take that vote. Commissioner Meyer did not bring forward Resolution 305 that we just voted on, and he pointed out that I had said that that I said that he brought that forward. Commissioner Meyer did move the resolution. I had asked staff to bring that forward based on some concerns that I had heard from the community. So I appreciate Commissioner Meyer's support, but just to clarify, he did not bring the resolution. He was not the genesis of the resolution. So my apologies for misspeaking there. Going out of order, all of those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, we are adjourned.
It is 7:19. I'd like to call to order the Recreation Committee. I want to seek approval for agenda Wednesday, July 10th, 2018.
Excuse me, you need to have
I'm
us
so sorry.
attendance first.
I'd ask the secretary to call the roll for the Recreation Committee.
Commissioner Forney.
Here.
Commissioner Music.
Present.
Vice President Hassan. Absent. And Vice Chair Severson.
Present.
And Chair French.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Assistant Acting Superintendent Ringo. I'd like to seek approval for the minutes, for the agenda for Wednesday, July 10th, 2018. Actually, those are for the minutes for July.
19, so moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I don't know what we're voting on. Are we voting on the agenda or the minutes?
Minutes. It's written wrong here.
Okay. Did we already approve the agenda?
I don't think we did.
We haven't.
But that's.
I think we have to approve the agenda first, and then we can do the minutes.
All right. I would entertain a motion to pass the agenda for tonight.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
You don't need a second.
All
You've
in
made a
favor
minute.
of approving agenda?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Tonight we have
We still need to approve the minutes.
Now we can do the minutes.
I'd seek approval for the minute approval.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We have one study report tonight, and it's about the youth line and full-service community schools. I believe Acting Assistant Superintendent Larry Humphreys will come and talk to us about these two issues.
Thank you, Chair French and Commissioners. I have a brief update on youth line staffing and full-service community schools that we wanted to share with the board. So update on our youth line staffing model. Youth line staff have had their staffing structure reassigned to report to the recreation service area managers effective September 1st, 2019. These staff will be moving from the Youth Development Department into the Recreation Centers and Programs Department. Their assignments and the recreation centers that they're currently in, there will not be any broad sweeping changes going on, but their just reporting lines will change, and they'll be reporting to the Recreation Service Area Managers. Their focus will be on center-based programs and youth development, and the 12 center staff are assigned to the following sites. Powderhorn, there's a Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and Whittier split, Peavy and Phillips, East Phillips, Stewart, Harrison, North Commons, Falwell, Farview, Longfellow, Sibley split, Luxton, Van Cleve split, and then Logan. Those are the sites where the 12 field youth line staff are assigned to currently. And just for your reference, updated organizational chart. The orange is where there's been a shift from previous. So the youth line staff you'll see under the service area managers, and the rest of the organizational chart primarily stays the same. Then I have a brief update on full-service community schools. Most of this information you heard last Thursday night at our joint MPRB-MPS board meeting. But there are a couple of updates since then. As you're aware, the Bethune Community School is our partnership site that we're going to be working on. We are happy to announce that we have made a job offer, and there's been an acceptance by Vanessa Gill. Her start date is going to be September 3rd. Until Vanessa begins, I will be the point of contact for the MPRB with MPS. Next week, I will be attending all of the Minneapolis Public Schools full-service community schools trainings with Patrice Howard and a few other representatives from MPS, and then hopefully I will be able to maintain that information and pass it on the best I can to Vanessa when she starts on the 3rd, and then keep Assistant Superintendent Cox in the loop when she returns from leave in a few weeks. So our next steps with the Bethune Community School are to onboard the site coordinator, which will happen right after Labor Day, collaborate with MPS, and we hope that next week we'll have some more information after the trainings and the meetings with the public schools, and develop our marketing and communication plan. And just a few notes, the things that have happened at Bethune over the course of the summer. There was a town hall for the community school at the Sumner Library on July 10th. They did some phone banking on the 24th and the 1st for all of the full-service community schools. And they've just begun asset mapping with potential partners to support all the goals of the full-service community schools. So that is the brief update on both of these topics, and if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you. I believe Commissioner Vito.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Chair French, I'm not on this committee, but I guess I have a concern. So, I don't know, maybe like a month or so ago, we had a presentation about Youth Line, and that we would get some updates in the fall on how to move forward. So I guess I'm a little confused on where the decision was made to make changes before we had the follow-up presentation in the fall, right?
Thank you.
I mean, I just remember that question.
Chair French, Commissioner. Chair French, Commissioners. So this is a change that's been in the works for a while. What we have understood is that we'd be implementing the change in September, and then more of the work around the visioning of it will happen throughout the fall. So I don't know if there was just a confusion in what was intended in that part of it, but the visioning part of the next steps with the Youth Line reporting into the service area managers will begin when Assistant Superintendent Cox returns from her leave.
Okay, I just want to say that I'm super concerned about these changes already, especially since Assistant Superintendent Cox is not at work, and this is her department, and she is the person who gave us the presentation about the upcoming changes. And from what I remember about the presentation, there was going to be no changes. So if staff even so happened to look at the meeting, they probably thought nothing would be different until the fall at the earliest. So I'm just super concerned that we had this conversation several meetings ago. I remember being told that we had a presentation on what we found about Youth Line. I had many concerns about Youth Line and want to see it go in a different place. But I'm even more concerned now that there has been changes, specifically while Assistant Superintendent Cox is out of work. And there's been this new workflow chart seems to be very different to me than the previous flow chart. Thank you.
Chair French, Commissioners. So Superintendent Bangor and Assistant Superintendent Cox have been in conversation about these changes, and my understanding is they're in agreement on them.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Vito. I think we had Commissioner Severson this next.
Thank you, Chair French. So I'm super excited and a huge advocate of Youth Line, and I think that we have underfunded Youth Line for years. And I think the whole city should take a more keen interest in Youth Line and their successes in the past and their possible success in the future. But we have to figure out a way to fund it. And one thing that I think that the Park Board did is they watered down Youth Line 4 or 5 years ago. And the way that I believe that they watered them down was by making Youth Line staff go to 2 parks or even 3 parks. I've heard that. I don't know how true that is. But as I look at this chart, can you pull the one back up at where Youth Line is? I would just, there's another one too with the parks on it.
Chair French, Commissioner Severson, is it the bottom bullet where it lists where all the?
Yeah, but the other, it had the parks listed, and that one can work too, but there was another slide that I've seen. The thing that I'd like to encourage commissioners is to get a good understanding of this program. These folks are hardworking folks working with our teenagers, right? And I love the way that the north side is set up, that each one, Youth Line has basically one park that they're in charge of. I would like to see that happen in other parts of the city as well, so the staff can put a zoomed-in focus on particularly teenagers in that recreation center. And instead of splitting them in half, how do we in the future think about a better way to fund the future of our city, right? So how do we make sure that we don't lose any Youth Line staff, but we put a full-time person at both Longfellow and Sibley, or both at Phillips and PB? because it's important. These people do really good work, and it's important that we continue to try to fund programs, particularly people working with our teenagers.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll add mine. Youth Line, my perspective of Youth Line, I think is a little different from a lot of other people's perspective on this board, because I was a frontline Code 8 worker, and I would sit at the front desk and hang out with the youth. And Youth Line was like the highlight of the day. When the Youth Line worker was coming in, either they had a trip planned or had some programming planned, a short basketball tournament, or whatever the ideals were. These folks came in, brought new, fresh ideas. That was their job. And me, somebody who worked in the schools, seen a very, very, very great comparison between our youth workers and our educators who work in our schools, especially our paraprofessionals. So I want to make sure that these guys and ladies have the tools and the resources they have to make their job successful. So if we've done something that's not working, I really want to know about it as quickly as possible. And if we're doing stuff that's working way better than we thought it was going to work, I want to hear about that as well. Because I think sometimes when we want to change things, we have a tendency to grow a sense of kinship to the way things used to be. And sometimes there can be some good things in change, but I want to make sure that we're doing it in a perspective that we're taking other people's feelings into consideration. And I want to make sure that the program is going to remain solid for years to come. So if this is the change that we're going to do, I want to make sure it's going to be solid for not just this year, 2 years from now, but when 5-10 years from now we decide another superintendent, that it'll still be ready to go. So thank you for your work, thank you for your presentation, and appreciate it. I would like to call a motion to adjourn the Recreation Committee.
So moved.
Thank you. All approve?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
I'd like the Planning Committee to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll? Sorry.
Commissioner Severson.
Present.
Commissioner Meyer.
Present.
Commissioner Vita. Present. Vice Chair Cogill.
Present.
Chair Forney.
Here. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We'll take a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, July 17th, 2019. All those in favor, please signify by saying, any discussion?
I would just add also the minutes of Wednesday, August 7th, 2019.
Okay. Any discussion on that? I just was curious, Commissioner Vital, on the 17th, there was a tabling motion, whether or not you had indicated. So is the minutes reflecting your?
I had talked to
Okay, so that is corrected?
She's correct.
Okay.
Thank you,
So
Commissioner.
the minutes of July 17th will be moved with a correction. All those in favor of that, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, abstentions? So then also an approval then of the minutes from Wednesday, August 7th, 2019. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay, we have an action item, Resolution 2019-283.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-283, that the board take from the table Resolution 2019-283, a resolution approving the charge and slate of the Community Advisory Committee for Parks for All, the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board 2021 Comprehensive Plan.
Okay, any discussion on this item? Any committee members? Oh, before I do that, I would like to just make a comment. it's been, whatever, I've been told that there's been an awful lot of maybe lack of attention to our meetings, and so I guess I would like to really request if everybody could put aside their cell phones. In fact, I'm going to put mine up here just so that we all know, out of transparency and just courtesy to everybody, that we are staying focused on the meeting. I'd just appreciate that. So anyway, I believe that President Bourne, you would like something?
Thank you, Chair Forney. I have, Assistant Superintendent Schroeder, can you walk us through, at our last presentation before this was untabled, there were some very disturbing key demographics missing from the groups that we were trying to engage in the Parks for All Community Advisory Committee. Can you walk us through the makeup of the staff suggested slate again and highlight some of those constituency groups that we're still missing?
Chair Forney, President Bourne, I should have brought with me the very large boards that we have that actually articulate where we have representation and where we don't. But what I can do for the board is articulate the points of diversity that are recommended in a CAC under the community engagement policy, and that might help. I don't know particularly where we fell short, but I could refer to those boards and help you understand if I had more time. We look for racial, ethnic diversity, generational diversity.
Point of order, yes, Councilor Rice.
Madam Chair, just as a parliamentarian, I'm wondering where you at on your agenda.
Thank you.
The last action that I heard was a motion by Commissioner Beacock to take item 4.1 off the table.
Exactly.
Is that voted on? I don't.
No, it hasn't been voted on, so.
And I don't believe that Commissioner Bourne's raised a point of order, or he's not on the committee, so.
Okay.
For the record, and for somebody who wants to follow this transcript, you need to know where you're at.
Okay, so I guess I will then cease the discussion and ask for all those in favor of the resolution 2019-283. All those in favor, please signify by saying.
Of untabling it.
You take it off the table.
Take it off the table.
Right,
Yes.
right. The resolution is stated that by Commissioner Vito. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so
Okay.
now
Thank you.
we can have discussion regarding that. I apologize.
Chair Forney and President Bourne. So the points of diversity we look for are racial and ethnic diversity, generational diversity, socioeconomic diversity, linguistic diversity, diversity of interests, people with disabilities, geographic disability, diversity, and diversity in political experience. So when we look across those, I think there are 8 different topics. We chart those, and we are drawing from a pool of applicants. So our capacity to fulfill that diversity is limited perhaps by the applicants that are actually in the pool.
Am I hearing you say that you had a limited pool of applicants?
Chair Forney, President Bourne, I believe there were 48 applicants. I don't remember the exact number for the scope of the project. I think I recall talking with Carrie Christensen that there were something like 48 applicants.
Okay, so a limited pool of applicants to yield the diversity in the committee that we would all like to see.
Yes.
Okay. I remember specifically there was, and I apologize that I don't have those key missing demographics either, but one really stood out to me, and it was a desire to have a member of the CAC be someone who is currently experiencing homelessness, and that was a key demographic that was missing. The park board has something like a $10,000, I don't know how directly you can speak to this, but the park board has something like a $10,000 contract with St. Stephen's to do community outreach to folks in our parks that may be experiencing homelessness. Is that correct?
Chair Forney, President Bourne, it's outside of my jurisdiction, but
Okay.
that could be correct.
Okay. I'm assuming, I know we have a contract, I don't know what the amount is. I'm assuming that the planning department did not work with St. Stephen's to solicit applications to folks that we may be working with St. Stephen's, who may be experiencing homelessness?
Chair Forney, President Bourne, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. I would hope that the answer would have been yes, and that we did work with that partner that we're investing some resources in, that has a lot more access to folks in the community that may be experiencing homelessness than we may have as a board of 9 commissioners. I just have some overall, and I'm hoping that I can get an answer to that when it comes to the full board. I do have some overall concerns with some of the key missing demographics in the staff recommended slate. I'll be bringing forward an amendment when this comes to the full board. So I just wanted to make staff aware of that. I think that amendment has already been sent out to at least committee members, if not the entire board. I just have some concerns with the lack of diversity and the lack of overrepresentation by some entities some organizations that have a very committed stake to some of the privatization that's been happening with the park board right now too. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see for our most important plan a more robust and more representative slate of folks come forward. And I think that we can do that through our appointees, but we rely on staff to bring forward that diversity as well and to round that out. And so I know staff did a stellar job with the amount of applicants we received, but I'd rather do this right than expediently, considering that it's our master plan and our planning staff have a lot of other work they can be doing in the meantime. So thank you, Assistant Superintendent Schroeder. Thank you, Chair Forney.
I believe Commissioner Severson, next. Oh, you're like talk now? You're not, oh, you didn't want it. Okay, excuse me, then Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Chair Forney. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate being given an opportunity to speak. Are there specific individuals that you object to staff recommendations on, President Bourne, that are in that list?
President Bourne?
Thank you, Chair Forney. I have some reservations with the, not individuals. I think we have a lot of really great individuals that have applied. I have some more concern that the slate is filled and there are some key areas that are missing, that our staff are geared through some of the partnerships that we do with St. Stephen's, for example, that they are better geared to make recommendations for than us as individual commissioners. I do have some concern about the influence of both Green Minneapolis and the Lopet and some of the employment affiliations of members. I would like this to be and this is my personal preference. I would prefer this to be a committee of community members and not a committee of organizations that have some vested interests in financial decisions that the park board will make during the course of its master plan.
And thank you. And have you made your appointment of chair yet? Because I'm holding off on my appointment of my representative until I know who's chairing this committee.
Commissioner?
Chair Forney, I have not.
Could you enlighten me as to when you intend to make that appointment? Because I would like to appoint someone, but based on feedback I've received about other chairs, I'm trying to be very thoughtful about how I go about doing that.
Chair Forney?
Yes, if you would you like to respond? I would appreciate it, yes.
The Chair Forney, Commissioner Musich, I have not made my appointment yet. The appointment that I make as a commissioner should have no bearing or impact on the appointment that any other commissioners make. Every commissioner has the ability to appoint whoever they want and appoint the most qualified person that they would like to see represent their office on a community advisory committee.
President Bourne, I'm not sure if you're speaking or not. Your light is on, and so that's why it's been a little bit confusing about what's going on here. Okay, so Commissioner Vito.
Thank you, Chair Forney. I guess I'm a little concerned that I understand that there are people from specific communities that we want to reach out to, but I mean, if we're focusing on the homeless community, I'm pretty sure this may not be a priority for someone from that community. So what happens if we don't find someone from that community? We spend weeks or months or whatever, then like, how do we move forward with this? Yes, President Bourne, please.
Please, President Bourne.
Commissioner.
It's being addressed to you.
Commissioner Forney, this is my particular concern with the homeless community is that the homeless community is more often than not invisible, and we treat the homeless community as invisible. I was incredibly proud to see our staff have recognized that invisibility of that community and put that on a list of representative groups that we would like to hear their voice and erase that invisibility. I'm incredibly concerned that we recognize that as an invisible group, but we are still considering moving forward with keeping them invisible. That's incredibly hard for me to reconcile. And so I don't know the answer to that. I think the Board of Commissioners has allocated resources to staff to work with the homeless community and to engage the homeless community, and I'm in particular disappointed that it sounds like we may not have. While we have recognized that, I'm hoping that we did, but if there's a community that we are acknowledging is too often invisible, and we did not work with the partners who we are paying to engage that community, St. Stephen's has a greater ability to make a meaningful connection with a member of the community experiencing homelessness than, I will just speak for myself, than I do. And I would imagine that same response would be from the rest of the board. And that's just the one that I'm remembering off the top of my head, and I'm not on this committee, but there are a lot of key demographics that I'd like to see us move forward on. So I don't know directly how to answer your question, but that's a serious, serious concern for me. Thank you, Chair Forney.
Commissioner Vito, more questions? Okay, I'll go to Commissioner Koga.
All right, thank you, Chair Forney. I gotta say, I think that President Bourne brings up some good points, and they're kind of philosophical questions regarding the entire concept of a community advisory committee for a planning process. Planning processes are complex, they're abstract, and often require a certain amount of time commitment and ability or desire to go into developing a depth of knowledge around a subject to come up with informed decisions, and to also be able to navigate a kind of committee process, which in itself can be trying and take time. And I do believe in the stead and the concept of having a community advisory committee, and I also believe in the laudable goals that President Bourne is bringing up, that if we're going to do this right, we should do it right. That being said, we've had a good amount of time to have this discussion, and President Bourne said he would be bringing forward an alternative resolution at the full board. So I suppose that I'd be very interested in hearing that at the full board meeting. In the meantime, I think that this larger conceptual discussion is one that I would hope staff could, in an ongoing way, deal with. I've found personally in the few appointments that I have made to community advisory committees that the work of trying to get somebody that is even representing a demographic that isn't usually represented in community advisory committees is not just a struggle, but is a really big hurdle. And this gets to a lot of issues, but one of them being, are we paying community advisory committee members? Another is, should the community advisory committee structure even be something that is the main thing that we use for planning processes? And I don't know if I necessarily have the answer to this. I do, though, believe that we should be moving forward in a community planning process for a comprehensive plan. And for that reason, at this committee level right now, I'm going to vote in favor of the resolution.
Thank you. Commissioner Musich?
Thank you, Chair Forney. So again, the issue is coming up about, thank you for letting me speak. I'm not on this committee. I appreciate being given the opportunity about paying people to serve on community advisory committees. That was part of the discussion around changing our engagement policy. On March 27th of 2019, this board unanimously adopted a new engagement policy, which does not include paying people and which does still continue to utilize a community engagement committee to assist us with our planning endeavors. So at that time, this board could have chosen to modify that policy against guidance from staff that were involved in the process of helping to change that policy, and we did not do so. I'm perplexed why we continue to bring up something that we ostensibly have already addressed as a policy issue as this board. And if we're going to choose to continue to undermine a policy that we have all unanimously adopted, it really makes it incredibly difficult for me to tell people that the policies that we have are supported by this body and that the people can trust that we're going to follow those policies. My first term on this board, I could, without any qualms, tell people that I believe the Park Board does intense, thoughtful community engagement and that the feedback that they provide to staff will have an impact on what eventually comes before this board, and that the people that are sitting up here will listen to what people are saying, and we will take that into consideration when we try to pass actions before us. I can't say that anymore. I mean, I do believe our staff is working very diligently to tell people that and to do that work. But I find it incredibly difficult to believe that all of us are doing that hard work as well when we pass a policy and then continue to question whether or not we should have done that. It's baffling to me. I don't know how to process that mentally in a logical way. I want to believe that government, that policymakers, when they make a policy, intend to follow it and not decide on a whim to just change it, especially not so recently to when we made that policy change. I don't know what else to say, but I would hope that if we are going to change something, that we don't do it just on an ad hoc basis, making it unfair and unequitable to everyone that has taken the time to apply and give their personal time, that we would instead make it a policy change and we would apply it across the board so that everyone that has stepped up to do this important work is treated with the same level of respect and regard as whoever it is we're deciding to appoint to this particular committee.
Commissioner Severson.
I was trying to hold back for a while, but I got on this board because a lot of policies were unfair and have been unequitable for years and have not been representative of the community that I serve. So I just want to be on record, Chair Forney and President Bourne, that I'm ready to change a policy anytime it benefits the community that I serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Ringo.
Chair Forney, I just wanted to make sure we all know what the next step is here. So it's untabled. Council Rice, do we have to now make another motion at this point, or what's? Okay.
To move it forward to the board. A motion would be in order to approve Resolution 2019-287, either as is or with amendments, but the committee will need to take
I'll move Resolution 2019-283, right? that the board take from the, or no? So, what is the number that actually needs to get moved?
The board approved resolution 219.
You just said 287, right?
Committee approved 219, 283, resolution approving the charge, et cetera.
I move the resolution, whichever one it needs to be.
Thank you. I'd like to speak to this. This is the third meeting that this has been brought up, and it's the first meeting that it's been allowed to actually speak to it. And yet, these are some very significant things that are being lobbed out there as far as what seems to be viewed as a lack of what the staff slate is. I need to remind everybody that the appointments from all commissioners has been due for some time, and still there's only 4 members of the board that have done that. So I'm having great difficulty in changing, as Commissioner Musich has said, changing any of our policies if we haven't even fulfilled our portion of this charge. So I've said it before, we're putting the cart before the horse. And unless we want to change up the entire charge, which my understanding is that I believe that all board members did receive some sort of a substitute resolution. If that is something that people would like to entertain, I'd like to, hear that. I know that there's a motion on the floor to approve it the way it is, but I just would like to put that out there that there is some indication that there be a substitute resolution. I'm in agreement that there might be some things that are lacking as far as what demographics were asked. I don't believe maybe Assistant Superintendent Schroeder does know how many applicants we've had for the other 2 citizen advisory committees that we have already implemented under this policy. I don't believe that we've gotten thousands of applications on those other 2, and we only, let's say, we feel that this was a fewer amount. I'm quite sure that that was not the case. So we approved those other 2, but for some reason now we're questioning whether or not 48 applicants is an appropriate amount. So it seems like it's a very secular, conversation here, and I'd like to see the resolution go through the way it is with the slate, but I still don't hear anybody saying that they're going to put forth their commissioner appointees, and that defies what it is that we set up the staff slate for. It was to fill in where we commissioners did not meet the guidelines. So I'm very frustrated that I just feel that either we entertain this substitute motion and just throw everything back to staff to start all over again, and that means all of our appointees, we can reconsider all of them, that the few commissioners that have done. But staff has an obligation to fulfill this goal. It was a budget item that we put forth last year, and we seem to be putting one barrier in front of a barrier. And I don't believe that it's a matter that we're not trying to serve the community that I also serve. I'm seeing other lights, so I'll wait for those. I believe that Commissioner Meyer, that you were first. So if you'd like to speak to the...
First, I just wanted to clarify what it is that we're speaking to. So the motion that I was moving, Resolution 2019-283, a resolution approving the charge and slate of a community advisory committee for Parks for All, the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, 2021 comprehensive plan. There was just some confusing, because on the agenda packet, it refers to itself in the language, right? So that's the language of it. And I'll just speak briefly to it, that I'll be open to amendments at the full board, but I do want to move on with this. I don't want to start all over with it. So I'll be open to amendments that that won't extend, that won't start over on the process. I made my appointment months ago by the deadline. I would encourage the rest of the commissioners to complete theirs as well. Thank you.
President Bourne.
Thank you, Chair Forney. I do have a question on our engagement policy, and I thought I knew the answer for it. I'm trying to pull it up, but it's a 16-page document. If I understand the policy, or at least the presentations as it was written, commissioners make appointments, and then staff look at those appointments and recommend a supplementary slate. Is that, am I understanding that process right, Assistant Superintendent Schroeder?
Chair Forney, President Bourne, that's correct. We are trying to ensure some balance in the commissioner appointments. As stated earlier in the discussion, commissioners don't know who each is appointing until they're actually brought forward. In this case, we are trying to stay on a deadline. As Chair Forney stated, it is a budget goal for the planning division for 2019 and for 2018 as well. So we are trying to advance this. So in a particular way, to President Bourne's point, we may be a little bit out of order in terms of how we're actually advancing this, but we are trying to continue to advance the project as a whole.
So thank you, and I guess I have a question for Parliamentarian Rice. So it sounds as if the community engagement policy is not being followed right now because commissioners have not made their appointments. The order of operations is that commissioners make their appointments, and then staff brings forward a slate of recommendations of appointees to be approved by the board to augment commissioner appointments. If we're not following our community engagement policy that's an approved policy of the board, when this comes to the full board, a motion to suspend the community engagement policy would have to accompany this if we're not actually following the policy as spelled out. Is that correct?
Mr. President, no, I would probably take another tack on, and that's if people aren't following the policy, I think it's your job as president to make sure they do.
Mm-hmm. So including staff?
Yes.
Okay,
I think, yeah, if there's a order to be done and commissioners are supposed to make appointments, you should be telling them to make their appointments.
So commissioners should be making their appointments, myself included, and then we should be receiving a slate that augments those appointments. I'm confused, baffled, and frustrated that we would have a slate of augmented appointments before commissioners have presented their slate. And I agree with Commissioner Musich. I would like to be able to go tell the community that we are following our processes. So I'm a little lost as to what to do here as well. Thank you, Chair Forney.
I think it's a very simple answer. I think that all commissioners need to get their appointments in. And if this resolution goes forward, staff has requested, I can't remember, but it's been stated to me, I think it's 3, maybe 4 times, text, etc., have been sent to all commissioners. Please, to move this forward, we need these commissioner appointments. So I'll announce now that all commissioner appointments need to be in by the end of August. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. So moving on, we will have finally a report, a study report regarding the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers disposition study for the Upper St. Anthony Lock and Dam. Michael, please introduce our guest, Nan, and
Chair Forney, I'm glad to do this. So just a brief background, and Nan Bischoff is here from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and she'll probably repeat some of this. But just a few highlights. Following the closure of the Upper Locken Dam, and in October of 18, the Corps of Engineers was directed to pursue a disposition study. Nan Bischoff will explain what the technicalities of that are in just a few minutes. That study began in April of 2018. It is ongoing now. For particular interest for this board, the outcome could significantly influence the future of the Central Mississippi Riverfront Regional Park and the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park. You might recall that during your review of the Gorge master plan, we actually had two paths possible. One that would suggest a path if there was some change to the systems of locks and dams in Minneapolis, and one is if they were to remain. So I am going to see if I can't find the correct document here. And invite Nan to come up and maybe start while I try and find it. Let's see here.
That's it. Full screen?
Yes, full screen. This right here?
Yes. You don't have a clicker, do you?
Yahoo.
All right.
Welcome, Nan.
I'm sorry?
We do have a clicker.
That would work a little bit better. Yes. Thank you for inviting me, Chair Forney and President Bourne. Yes, I am Nan Bischoff with the Corps of Engineers, and we recently had a series of public meetings concerning our current study, and also we had meetings last week with local government organizations, non-government organizations, and state and federal agencies to inform them all about the history of the study and what is going on right now. So the question that we tried to get everyone focused on, or the question that everyone seems to be interested is in what is the future of St. Anthony Falls, what's the future of the river. But what our study has to answer first is what is the future of the Corps of Engineers at St. Anthony Falls. In the past, we've operated for navigation. We're currently operating for flood risk management. Do we need to stay there? And that is the big question that we'll be answering in this study. Okay, a little bit of background. I'm sure you all know where this is. The Upper St. Anthony Falls was completed as part of the Minneapolis Upper Harbor project. It was completed in 1963. Its primary purpose is navigation, commercial navigation mainly. It also has a secondary purpose of recreation that was added in the Flood Control Act of 1948. All federal sites have a dual purpose of recreation. Upper St. Anthony Falls is also important because it supports hydropower at the Excel plant located across the river. It is used for flood damage mitigation. The floodgate has been used 6 times in the 66-year life of the project. And it's also key in that it is part of the damming surface that makes possible the Minneapolis water supply. Okay. A little bit of background. The lock was ordered closed to navigation by the Water Resources Reform and Redevelopment Act of 2014. The last lockage was in June of 2015. The 2014 Act did require that the Corps remain on the site for operation of the floodgate. Okay, there are many reasons why the Corps is doing a study. We no longer have our primary purpose of navigation being fulfilled at the upper lock, and in addition, at the 2 lower locks, Lower St. Anthony Falls and Lock and Dam 1,
the level of service has dropped off and the demand for navigation has dropped off. We still do operate the upper site for recreation. We have guided tours that are led by the National Park Service. We also have an open visitor center at Lock and Dam 1. Again, gate operations are required at the upper and lower sites. Hydropower is important. And for these purposes, this diminishing use, the federal government does spend $1.5 million per year in maintaining these 3 sites. Last year, we did start a study. We had our public meetings last July, and the scope at that time was to study all 3 sites. We invited folks to give us an indication if they're interested in one or more of the sites. And then in October of last year, the America's Water Infrastructure Act was passed, which caused us to change the scope of our study. Okay, America's Water Infrastructure Act, there are 2 main sections that affect our study. The first of which is Section 1225. And that specifically tells us to do a study just for Upper St. Anthony Falls, to do it first. We also have to consider partial deauthorization. Previously, we looked at either keeping it entirely or disposing of it entirely. And the Act asks us to look at an in-between path, which would be to keep it while we maintain the flood risk mitigation. That section also tells us to gather information on ways to enhance recreational opportunities, the health of the ecosystem, the human environment, and the natural ecosystem. The other section of the America's Infrastructure Act that was passed last year is that we have to consider modifications, including dam removal. And this applies not just to Upper St. Anthony Falls, but also to Lower St. Anthony Falls and Lock and Dam 1. Okay. In addition to the act that was passed by the entirety of Congress, we received a letter from Senators Klobuchar and Smith indicating what their intent was in writing the legislation. And in particular, for Upper St. Anthony Falls, they wanted the Corps to work with the city of Minneapolis to help further the goals of revitalization of the riverfront. So now we have 2 studies. The first one will be for Upper St. Anthony Falls. That's what's going on right now. And we will be doing a study in the future on Lower St. Anthony Falls and Lock and Dam 1. And that may fit in more with the plans for the River Gorge downstream. But right now our concentration is just on Upper St. Anthony Falls. We have 3 alternatives. The no action is our standard series of alternatives. We have to consider doing nothing. The Corps stays there. We continue to operate the floodgate. We continue to allow the National Park Service to conduct tours and any other thing that falls within our authority. The second alternative is to dispose of the federal project at the site. We are required to consider structural removal. However, at Upper St. Anthony Falls, that's probably not going to be a feasible avenue. And then we also would consider disposal without structural removal. And then the final alternative will be that partial disposal where we stay and operate the floodgate and then we open up the rest of the site for development by others. Okay. We also have to include the soft topics, the human environment, natural environment, and to improve recreational opportunities. This is the Corps' planning process. I will be highlighting the opportunities and constraints that we are identifying in this early phase, but this is essentially what we do. It's probably similar to many of the planning processes that are followed by the Minneapolis parks. Okay, first of all, the opportunities. Our biggest opportunity that we're seeking is just to save some money. If we don't have to maintain the site, it saves the government some money. We also have the recreation, all the other ones, but also the opportunity that we see out here is enabling some of the other organizations to see some of their visions come true. So we would be enabling the other visions. Okay, and I want to make just a statement that the visions that I'm showing in this slideshow are not necessarily endorsed by the Corps. I'm just reporting on what we know about. Okay, first of all, we are aware of the Central Riverfront Master Plan. We are aware of the Waterworks Plan, the two phases, the mezzanine phase and the Riverside phase, and kind of shown on there is the future lock and dam phase. We are also aware of the visions of the Friends of the Lock and Dam, the Falls concept. I believe that this is in partnership with the city of Minneapolis. We're also aware of the vision of Crown Hydropower to locate a new hydropower facility at the site. And this is more of a vision downstream of Upper St. Anthony Falls. We are aware of the vision of restoration of the Mississippi River. And this may come into play more when we move on to the lower St. Anthony Falls and Lock and Dam 1 study. Okay. So here's our challenge. I mean, we have the three alternatives that the Corps needs to consider, but how they fit in with these visions are, can the visions be implemented under all three of these alternatives, or do some of the visions require that the Corps be gone or the Corps stay? Okay. Now, some of the constraints, and you may or may not be aware of some of these, but the main one is that we can't dispose of what we don't own. I do have a few maps that are in this presentation. We also have them on our website, and I brought big copies in the back of the room if you wanted to examine them. It shows exactly where the Corps, or rather the federal government, owns property at Upper St. Anthony Falls. If we do stay for flood operation, there are certain areas that we have to reserve for our use. We also have to recognize that Xcel Energy is our partner in this, and they do have access rights over the federal property. There are rescue boats on site. We do have to beware of not messing with the Minneapolis water supply, and one of the big drivers for the closure last time around was the concern with Asian carp. Okay. First of all, this in yellow is shown the lands that were given or transferred to the federal government by Northern States Power for construction of the upper lock. You can see in yellow what was Upton Island and what was Spirit Island. The areas in green are easements that we own. In addition, the structures that the Corps built are shown in blue. So these would also be federal property that would be subject to disposition or retention. What's shown in yellow is the main dam, the horseshoe, and the main spillway, and the rest of the damming surface that goes over to the north side of the river. The dam and spillway are owned by Xcel Energy. So again, we can't sell what we don't own, so any proposals would not include any changes to that property. Okay, these are just the locations of what I'm going to be showing in the next slides. We do need to access the site if we're going to continue to operate for flood mitigation. And what's shown in this picture is the gate in operation this spring. The gate can take up to 15,000 cubic feet per second. What's shown here is about 3,000. Okay. These are the areas that we use when we're operating the floodgate, the entire chamber. We lift the gate up and the water passes through the chamber. We also do need to use the top of the lock walls. Doesn't mean that we can't share the use of those lock walls, but during flood operations we do need them. This is what it looks like going through the lock. The other constraint is occasionally we will have to do major maintenance at the site. Maybe once every 20, 25, 30 years, we would have to bring a crane in for major maintenance. That would be for setting bulkheads and lifting equipment. And in fact, as I was driving here tonight, I noticed that there was a big crane in our parking lot tonight. I'm not quite sure why they're there, but there's definitely a crane down there. So we do use most of the parking lot currently for setting up the crane. There is one corner of the lot that the crane sits when it is in operation, and we extend a boom over the top of our lock wall to do all the lifting. And, the picture on the lower right shows a boom in operation. Okay. The issue is getting a crane in for that major maintenance. That was a 350-ton crane, which is pretty big. They're about 13 feet tall when they're driving down the road. And so it either has to fit under the Stone Arch Bridge under Portland Avenue, or else we have to bring it in from the lower Lock and Dam site and up through the access road. We are assuming that we will not have, or will not necessarily have access for a barge-mounted crane because we don't know what the future of Lock and Dam 1 and Lower St. Anthony Falls is going to be. Okay, so it's a constraint. We do need to think about getting a crane in. The other constraint, as I said, Northern States Power retained access rights across our property. The current owner, Excel, does have an operations building that's located on the site, and they do need to do some of their dam maintenance from the south side of the river. The other constraint, or rather a consideration, is both the Minneapolis Water Rescue and Hennepin County Water Patrol have rescue boats that are located on site. Either these boats would have to remain, or access would have to remain, or an alternate location would be needed for public safety. Okay. The other constraint, as I mentioned, was the location of the intakes for the Minneapolis water supply. Upper St. Anthony Falls provides a damming surface that keeps the water level at a certain elevation. If the dam isn't there, the water elevation drops, and then the Minneapolis water supply is sucking air rather than water. Yeah. And we do keep an eye on Asian carp, or rather the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources does a controlled capture every year. They go to places where carp like to hang out, and they capture them, and so every year they do keep an eye on them. Okay, those are the constraints. We do have some opportunities too. There would be parts of the lock that would be available for other use. If we're staying there for flood risk management, there are other parts that we don't need. We can divorce ourselves from the restroom. That could be taken over by someone else. And the central control station, we did a analysis a few months ago about whether we needed any part of that building, and it turns out that we don't need this building for any of the flood risk management. That building could be turned over to someone else entirely. Okay, so our process is to go through all of our alternatives. We examine cost benefits and assess the environmental, cultural, social impacts of that. We'll make a recommendation based on what we find, and we will be publishing a draft report in the spring of 2020. This is 2000, yeah. Well, next spring, probably about the May timeframe, we'll be publishing a report that will go out for public review for 60 days, and then after that we'll finalize our report. And then depending on if the action or the recommendation is no action, just do what we're doing, that's pretty much the end of our study. If the action is either a partial or a full disposal, then that has to go to Congress so that they can authorize, or rather deauthorize, the functions of the Corps there, and they would then direct the disposal or partial disposal of the federal property. Okay, after congressional action, there could be additional studies that would be done depending on what the recommendation is and who the future partner is and what exactly is recommended. And then we take the actions, and then that's the end of the study. Congress can, when they authorize or deauthorize or direct the General Services Administration to dispose of a property, or rather when they direct the disposal of the property, they can, in their act, tell us to whom the property should go. If they don't, it goes to General Services Administration, but they can direct who gets the property. But if Congress does not direct who it goes to, then the General Services Administration has a list of priorities. First, the property gets offered up to other federal agencies. If not that, we do have to consult, or rather they have to consult with the Department of Housing and Urban Development to determine if the property is suitable for homeless use, either in a support capacity or in a housing capacity. And if that doesn't yield anything, then it goes to a negotiated sale to a state or local government or a nonprofit, but it has to be for public use. And then the last is to go out for a public auction or sealed bid. And it very, very rarely goes beyond the first step if it's turned over to GSA. There usually is some federal agency that would want to take the property. Okay, so as we said at our recent public meetings and agency meetings, we are taking comments right now on those soft topics that I mentioned several slides previously. We're also taking comments on the scope, and we're also taking comments on any other visions that folks want to share with us. As I showed you, these are the visions that we know about. If there are any other visions that are out there, this is an opportunity to share them with us and to have them considered in the report. Again, public meetings next spring, and then after a 60-day review, we'll finalize a report, and it probably will be about the December 2020 timeframe when the report will be complete and forwarded up the Corps chain of command. Okay, and again, this is what we're asking for input on. This is also posted on our website, and I do have the location of that website that I can provide if any of you would like to check it out. But this is what we're taking input on. And I think that that's the last of my slides.
That was a lot to comprehend. Thank you, ma'am. Really, no, it was marvelous and everything.
Yeah, how long did it take me? Because it usually takes me about, well, I cut out about half of the slides, but.
I wasn't timing. Anyway, Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you for coming to us with this report. I go by the site almost every day on my bike. And we're definitely, I'm definitely very interested in the future of this. Can you go back one slide to the timeline of this?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to have the report by April of 2020, and I'm just wondering, at what point would we need to start lobbying our Congress members if the report found that you do need to dispose of it, and we wanted to have our say on that? Like, is that starting in May then?
You could lobby them anytime. I think that there are other organizations that are doing just that.
I mean, I don't have an opinion on if you need the site for flood control. Like, that would be something that would,
yeah.
I'd wait for that to be determined before we would do that. But
yeah. I guess the question might be, does the Minneapolis Park and Rec see any purpose on the federal property that may become available? And like I did show the master plan, I mean, is that something that you wanted to expound on, or? Definitely we would take input on that.
I would also like our lobbyist, Brian Rice, to weigh in. Can you update us on where the Friends of the Lock and Dam are? And I know that there were other groups that were involved in this.
Yeah, the Friends of Lock and Dam secured a $2.8 million, tentative recommendation from the Legislative and Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources. that recommendation be finalized in November or December this year and then go to the next year's legislature for action, but it seems like they're making some progress there. That's what I know about their efforts. I think they continue to be active. I don't know how far that would get them with the Corps' work, but I know they continue to express an interest in it. And I was going to ask one question, Nan. Are you familiar with a project called the Wishbone?
I've heard of it, yeah.
But I don't know that you listed that, or did I miss that in your, you had said
I did, I did attend a meeting, and I think it was former Commissioner Opatz, was
Well,
it?
he's still a current county
Oh,
commissioner.
is he? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
I guess
sorry.
he's still, well, all right.
But I mean, that wasn't listed in your presentation. I wonder if at least you're aware of that.
I did attend that presentation. I asked for a copy of it, and
There's
it
still
wasn't
copy.
forthcoming, so I'm not sure if
That's
it's still a
another-
going.
Sorry, that's off the Commissioner Myers' question, but just.
Oh, okay.
Seems like there's a lot of interest in it. I know the Friends of Block and Dam have expressed a lot of interest in the project, and they seem to be making some headway.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not sure who, I guess, encouraged Congress to encourage us to stay there. I said, I'm not sure who encouraged our congressional folks to write the language to encourage us to stay there, because it would have been kind of black or white, stay or go. So it seems like folks want us to stay and operate the flood control gate. Okay, nobody wants to take that away from it. I mean, we can't give it away. We still have to, discuss it. But when you consider what areas then we have to reserve for operation and maintenance, that kind of curtails some of the visions that are currently out there. So I think that Friends of the Lock and Dam, I think, has to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to coexist with us operating the floodgate.
Sorry, Commissioner, to answer your question.
You did, thank you.
And you're finished?
Yes, I'm
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Severson?
Thank you, Chair Forney. I don't have much to add to this conversation other than thank you. You did a wonderful job tonight. I was really excited to see this in committee because I most recently took a trip as far down as we can go to the upper dam, up to the Coon Rapids Dam, and which intrigued me to start doing some research on the Coon Rapids Dam, which is out of service from my understanding, and I think went out in the 60s, or they traded hands, something or another that I was reading upon. But I would hope that we could do some research on what Three Rivers Park has done with that, with the Coon Rapids Dam, and what we could possibly do. And I'm speaking in my own position as a person who represents District 2, because I will say I am quite disappointed that as a young man who used to have the opportunity to go all the way to the St. Croix River from right here, Boom Island, just across from my district. It's disappointing that that a lot of folks in my community, or just in Minneapolis in general, don't get that opportunity to navigate that beautiful river and have that wonderful experience. So I just want to say thank you. You did a wonderful job. And the restrooms, I have a high interest in. During the campaign, restrooms were not on my radar, and I hear that quite often now, how the community wants access to restrooms, and I think we can prevent folks from peeing on trees or other places too if we have accessible spaces for them to go. So, like I said, thank you. This was right on time for my research that I'm doing on Coon Rapids Dam. And if you have anything cool on the side you want to share with me later on, I'll take that.
Thank you. Oh, Commissioner Koga?
Thank you, Commissioner Forn. Or were you done? I'm sorry. Okay, cool. Thanks for the presentation. I just want to say that I'm excited about this study. I'm hopeful that it includes some of the work that was done around the visioning for waterworks, since that has already begun, and we're in construction of that first mezzanine phase. I overall I would echo Commissioner Severson's comments about the bathroom situation, but just also just activating that space as best as possible for educational and environmental opportunities, I think, is the critical next step for that space. And how broad or bold or ambitious we go with that, I kind of leave that up to this process to think a little bit about. But whether it's the wishbone or it's something closer to some of the smaller visions for the space. Regardless, though, I think that since we have already moved forward with Waterworks, it would be great to really think critically about including that.
Thank you, Nan. First of all, remind me, as of 9/11, the bathrooms got shut down, and that's what I thought, that I heard. Anyway, but the shut bathrooms were not open to the public, and it's been more recently that the park board has been contracted to clean the bathrooms?
Yeah, I think there's a cooperative agreement going on where I think the National Park Service opens the facilities at a certain time, but I think the park board provides toilet paper and the supplies, and yeah. The Corps staff has been reduced significantly. We have the staff at Lower St. Anthony Falls and Lock and Dam 1, serving those two sites, but just occasionally coming up to Upper St. Anthony Falls. So as the hours of operation shrink down, the staff is shrinking down as well. In its heyday, this Upper St. Anthony Falls, or all three sites were operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 2 people per 3 rotating shifts, plus there were laborers and equipment mechanics and lockmasters and assistant lockmasters. So you went from maybe 24 people at the 2 upper and lower sites, and now we're down to probably about 3 or 4. So it's a big site to take care of with just a few folks, and especially if at the lower lock we have the 3 movable dam gates, and those sometimes have to be, they do have to be monitored 24 hours a day. So it's hard to run up to the upper lock and change a light bulb or put in a new roll of toilet paper. So.
Well, I'm just very appreciative, number one, that the visitor center has been reopened thanks to the agreement with the National Services. And I tell everybody that I do the bathrooms on Saturdays, so I know that agreement is still there, but it's being activated in a totally different way than it was before. And I think that's, your question that you're asking is, what do we see as the future? What is our commitment to that? And per our central master plan and everything, we definitely do want to be a significant part, of whether it's the disposition of the land, whatever, if it gets sold to an entity that wants to activate it as we've envisioned, I think is how I see us playing a significant role. Just give me a worst case scenario if you were not, if the Corps was not there to service the flood control. Worst case scenario. I mean, I heard you say that the water supply would be impaired, whatever, it would be a vacuum.
Well, if the dam were not maintained, I think that whether the Corps is there or not, the damming surface is going to remain. Somebody's going to take care of it.
Okay.
I would think that if it wasn't the federal government, that I would guess that Xcel Energy probably has the most interest in maintaining the damming surface and the capacity of the floodgate.
Great, that's very helpful to know.
Yeah.
Trying to get it into my head what all that entails and everything. So if I hear what you say, you would like to have us eventually here weigh in as to what our future role might be, and to weigh in, if I read correctly, you would like to get that in?
By the 20th of October.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So unless I hear some other comments and everything, I would like to close this down and direct this to staff that hopefully we can respond to you. And I'd so appreciate your presentation at this hour. And so I will call for a motion for adjournment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're adjourned.